Yeah. Absolutely no sanity was lost in the making of this stream. Let's make sure everything is working, and then I will post all the stuff I need to post to tell people we're live. I also have the stream intro video made. So I doubt any of you watching this will, to be honest, I kind of doubt anybody will use that, but I thought it would be cool, so I decided to make it. That is basically just the video where I'm introducing people to the idea of a stream that is like a guided tour of Elden Ring status incantations. I don't know, what even is this stream, right? I presented the premise of the streams, and then the idea is that people will be able to follow along that way. If people want to watch the stream, but they don't know like what's happening, they can watch that video in like a relatively short amount of time. They can understand what's going on. I'm also saying this colloquially because if you are watching this and you want to follow along with these streams, want to know the significance of the Dragon Communion Seal, I mean, we'll talk about it during this stream too. I did make a video just for you to do that, so that'll be linked in the description of the version of this that's on YouTube. Anyway, you can go check that out if you want. It's like 7.5 minutes or something, and I tried really hard to make it shorter. So sorry.
Dragon Communion Seal be upon ye.
Whoa! Dragon Communion Seal be upon ye. Well said, text to speech. Thank you for the Prime sub for 50 months, Ragnavar. Welcome back. How you doing? It's a good day to die, isn't it? We're done with the rigmarole of getting this. You know, it's funny. It's so available early in the game, and in a way, the dungeon that you do is really a good fit for getting into the early game, right? It's a dungeon that's very... I do the whole process, such as it is. I mean, it takes like only 3 minutes to get the Dragon Communion Seal in the video. I just recorded an uncut clip of me doing it. And obviously, in some ways, it's really easy. You know, it's in a dungeon that you can access right away. Well, you need 2 stone sword keys, but I mean, you can just go get them. Like, there's a few locations in the open world you could just run by and pick one up. There's some you can buy from shops. It's really easy to do that within the first, 20 minutes of playing the game. And then the dungeon, such as it is basically just running away from those stupid chariots. It's not very fighting focused. You do have to fight a spectral knight enemy, but I mean, it's one guy. Like, come on. I no offense, it's fine if you have difficulty with that. I'm just saying I feel like it is very feasible to do it like first thing in the game. But at the same time, there's not a lot you can do to make this less of an asinine experience. I despise this dungeon. Like, why did they make it like this? Why did they make the chariots timed in such an like a stringent way sometimes? Why did they make it so the chariots have a little spike which goes a little bit into the safe zones that you can step into as you're running through the hallway, so that it kills you if you're like doing what you would do, which is waiting to jump out and run past the chariot because the timing is so strict? But why? Just a lot of things why. And just for that, Miyazaki's put in another poison swamp. Like, that's you know what I mean? The horror, the true horror of that dungeon is that if you complain, it gets worse. You maybe shouldn't play the rest of this game. I needed to take a break. I stopped the stream last week and then just did it and had a much better time that way. And it's none of your faults. I would, in many cases, rather have your company for that kind of stuff. But okay, great. And so another thing I did for the stream today is I do have a little document that is kind of like a guide, loose guidebook of stuff like status incantations and then like some relevant weapons. And I'm going to add other stuff to it like Ashes of War that we would pick up at different stages of the game. So this playthrough today, this section of the playthrough is going to be mostly about getting things set up. So, I mean, I'll equip the darn thing. You little stinker, get in there. Let me put that shield back on. Probably swap to Reduvia and the Dragon Communion Seal. It behooves us to upgrade this and then to start setting up some spells with it. And there's some obvious holes in our loadout right now, right? Like, I don't have any talismans. I have literally 0 talismans. Not ideal. But yeah, we'll go from there. I actually don't know what spells we have. Like, how is this going? And we probably need spell slots too. Literally 2 spell slots. Okay, it's not a huge deal because the early game choices are like kind of terrible. We're definitely taking Rot Breath. This is huge. There's not a lot of forms of Scarlet Rot status in Elden Ring, and the thing about doing a status build is that you can't stack the statuses mostly. Blood Loss and Put a Pin in Frostbite can be, you can apply it over and over again. But for most of them, it's just, do you have a form of Scarlet Rot inflicted? Do you have a poison inflicted? Yes, I know that there are different forms of Scarlet Rot and poison, but they don't stack, is the point. Like, mostly it's just of the, like, only 5 sources in the whole game of Scarlet Rot that there are, inflict 1. And then that slot's kind of full. Scarlet Rot and poison take a long time to tick. So once you've done that, it's just kind of, you got your damage boost for the fight. Frostbite, once you inflict it, you do get a big spike of damage, and then the enemy takes more damage from incoming sources. And so once you inflicted that, it's kind of just, you've got it. I think it probably makes sense to also bring Dragon Ice in this other slot. Now, Dragon Claw is really good. I think it's really good, and would be a very good sort of early game carry. I need 17 Faith. Like, I definitely want to use that, so let's just look at... I don't even know what this build stats are anymore. 15, okay, pretty good. I have no runes, because I lost them dying to get the Dragon Communion Seal to the Chariots. So, yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, so 17 Faith is definitely a plan for right now. Get some plans written down for the day, and 17 Faith will be one of them. And then getting the Dragon Communion Seal leveled up will be one of them. Level Dragon Communion Seal. And, of course, more spell slots. Followed in a distant 4th place by actually find more status spells. Because there aren't very many in the early game. But there's some good ones. There's something that's like a poison buff for your weapon. So essentially just a poison grease effect, but as an incantation. I feel like that's kind of nice early game to save you the, I guess, money resources on doing that. It's a pretty dreary start, huh? I've got a red glowing widget in my fist. It's a rainy day. I've got a bad hat on and a stolen pair of clothes, but gosh darn it, I got fire breath spell. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, there we I can breathe farts. Everything's gonna be okay. Let's go over here, so I'm not blocking the, like, my flasks and stuff. Welcome back, everyone. Let's just reorient, and then that's it. I was so busy and stressed out about getting everything in order that I'm now having that thing where I think it's fine and I've done everything I need to do and we can just hang it and play for, like, months, but I'm having trouble switching gears in my brain to the mode where I don't... It's not that I had to panic before, but where panic made sense, but it didn't really make sense either before. You know what I mean. I don't know, that. I'm sure some of you have experienced that. Asymptomatic, welcome back. You said, I had a great time with the Hunchback Parley. I really liked that one, yeah. Always happy when the captain is visibly having fun with it, too. Detailed review, feedback to come. Main piece I wanted to bring up is that there was a recurring question that I felt was answered by the prompt. Yep, I also thought that one was a good... I felt like I was able to do that well, but you also gave a very good central question. Just using AI to generate things and then saying that you made them bad. Just making things yourself, good, but requires a lot of skill. There are some cases in our current society, in the current day, where people are, like, assisting with AI. And what might we think about that? There are a lot of cultural concerns that I, to be blunt, feel like people kind of already know. I feel no need to posture to those. I'm going to assume you already know them. Like, what are the effects of doing such a thing? Let's just, like, analyze it. And I thought that was it was really good. If you're interested in a parlay, I think that's an excellent one. Should I link in the description the things that come up in the, so let's do that. Sure, I'll say I'll link the Hunchback Parley in the description. Because I thought it was neat. And also a kind of discussion most people would probably rightly be just afraid to have in public, you know. Ragnavar, welcome back. I'm attempting to recover from maths as art-induced brain overload. 2 swaps videos are uncontrolled controlled substances for sure. Never heard of it. I guess I'll take a look. 2 swap. Long show notes already today. Ragnavar, you said also the recent Jacob Geller video, How Well Can You Really Know a Game, was really good. I have thoughts thanks to it, or rather one rather succinct way to put my feelings on generative AI, made relevant thanks to the recent Parley videos where generative AI content has come up. That's also a surprising tie-in. Yep, I know for a lot of you, this has been a recurring subject. So I'm happy to hear it was interesting. Yeah, let's go. I feel like there's not... Let's put 17 Faith on the back burner and see what we can do with leveling the Dragon Communion Seal now. Which the answer is I don't know. Oh, well, we don't have runes. Right, okay, let's just get more spell slots. Let's do that. That's really easy to do. I didn't even put that in the notes. More. We need them. Desperately need them. No way around it. Gotta have it. And that's easy. You can get spell slots from these tower challenges, like wizard towers. I think this is a really nice little bit of, not really environmental storytelling, but I guess like world building that is in the game. Like, it's kind of nice that you can just look out for wizard towers and know that if you care about having spell slots, you would be able to get one if you did that tower. I think that's neat. The idea of having a little guidebook of notes for myself in that Google document that is shared in the description of the YouTube video is intended, of course, to be that I don't have to obsessively look everything up. That's very annoying. I feel that being able to find specific things in Elden Ring is a core part of the game, but the current game industry just essentially never includes that as part of the game. I feel this is not good game design, but I can't think of practically even a single game that makes that like part of the mechanics. For example, if you find the Dragon Communion Seal, there are a few things this is uniquely good at, but like the unique scaling with Arcane, the ability to scale statuses on spells. Not only does the game not tell you that you can't scale the status effects on incantations unless you have a seal that lets them scale with Arcane, kind of like plugging in your Arcane stat to the incantation using a seal that conducts that electricity. Is this metaphor helping? I don't know. Not only is that just not in the game at all, that's a thing people discovered by playing around with the game, though much of the theme of the Dragon Communion incantations relies on you knowing that is true, or I guess assuming that's true, but not only is that the case, it's also true that things like stat soft caps and stuff, like a lot of the things that I think anyway make the stat system interesting are just not in the game at all. Build systems put us in the unique position of having to grapple with effects where it is arguably a big part of the experience that this effect exists. That damage was nice. But it just isn't in the text of the game in any way. It's very context important subtext. And I feel it's like sort of a game design error that this would be subtext. I don't think that really makes sense. Sorry, Turtle, I have to kill you. This is how you do this. It's not my fault. And yeah, I think that's very weird. Like, there isn't an easy way in that Parley, for example, to make that argument, that it is part of the game, that there's these weird scaling quirks. That is I think, fairly major part of the game, but it is literally nowhere in the text, if you will, of the game. Like, that is an odd position to be put in. I don't remember where the turtles are. Oh, there's an invisible one here. There we are. So I don't know. That does make it kind of difficult to discuss that aspect of the game. I don't know. I sort of lost my train of thought with where I was going with that. It's a whole can of worms. That's why I've got like 10 different places I'm going with that. Oh, look. Okay. There's a few of these, so I think I was confusing it with one of the, to be blunt, harder ones. And now these contain spell slots. Perfect. Not that we need very many for a while, right? It's not like there's exactly a mountain of good status incantations chomping at the bit for me to use. Just 1 or 2 more spell slots is enough that it's no big deal, really. We should run and get that one in Kaled. That's easy. I think that one is just outdoors. Is that true? So you just get the memory stone and it gives you another slot. That's just how the game represents the slots. Yeah, if we go here, I think, which it's pretty easy to do that. Maybe you can teleport here, but no, it's fine. I'll just run. A little bit of horsing around. Stupido asks, welcome back. Stupido, how you doing? We, Asymptomatic and Ragnavar are talking out the remnants of the generative AI related Parley that came out the other day. Asymptomatic had asked what I thought was a pretty interesting question about basically like the sort of in the middle ground of generative AI, where people seem to be interested in expressing something, but there's a significant gap in their ability to make it and what they want to make. And generative AI is sort of a more interesting subject, I would argue, in this case, because it puts you in a position where indeed that thing will not be made without the generative AI. But at the same time, I had eventually argued, basically my thesis for that parlay was, I think that ultimately if someone who tries, let's say to make a song, that was the example we used, and used generative AI to kind of bridge the gap between their skills, the parts of it they make, maybe they write the lyrics or make most of the music, and then what the generative AI creates, like the vocals, I don't know. I was just proposing that I think for most people that is going to end in you simply wanting to be able to do most of it yourself. Ragnavar also proposes a sort of counter angle that is, you could see it as that feeling is something other than wanting to create the thing. But I personally think that's only one interpretation. I see what you mean, though. It's not a bad point. Asymptomatic you, just to continue that since we're running for a little bit. You said, as for what I want from generative AI, it is the foreign and not pre-calculated. I think reading a new book or watching an unheard of anime is enjoyable because one does not immediately know the journey or the ending. Writing a whole song myself will not carry the inherent newness or intrigue. I was there when it was being written. Ooh, that's a really interesting subtext that I definitely didn't get from the parlay. That's kind of a different problem in my mind anyway. I think that is very interesting. Right, there's a fun to making something that is sort of more like input. I'm getting really lucky with these boulders. I didn't know those were there. Yeah, right, there's like a surprise that isn't there. You know, I have a really big relationship with that as well, asymptomatic. I want to talk about that for a sec. The whole, like when you... What do I want to call this? Something like novelty fatigue, or yeah, you do want to make something, but you don't want to be making the thing, is I guess the gap there. I don't have a good title for this one, sorry. You need to jump in the window of this tower to get into it, so that's what I'm going to be trying to do. It's probably going to be silly if I don't get it on the first try, but here we go. Okay, so having Torrent has vomited up their guts, and now we're gonna try again. So disorienting. Okay, we were so close. We're so close. Yeah, there are definitely things that I have wanted to make before that I felt that I think that exact same way about. Nice, there we go. That wasn't too bad. You actually can use Torrent in here, but I'm gonna fall off the edge. You know, I think of a project and I think, if I were to do that, I don't start doing it because I think to myself, if I were to start doing this, I would be uninterested in the topic a long time before I would finish it. And to be honest, I actually don't really understand how other people get around that feeling. I feel like that would happen for a lot of people. And for some people, I know the answer is they just push through it. It's their job or it's their chosen work, and they see it as not a big deal. I maybe am a greedy monster, and I do see it as a big deal. I want to be genuinely enjoying the things that I'm making and doing I don't know, like a larger percentage of the time. I had not thought of the idea that for some people, like something like not generative AI necessarily, but some process where you like mitigate almost your input to an extent and just kind of drive the project in a direction you're interested in. But I do feel like there are other solutions. You know, there are ways to make it ongoing. For example, I think that by the time I set up this playthrough for this stream, where I'm, oh, right, no, I want to leave out the window. By the time I finish setting up this playthrough, I probably wouldn't want to do every single playthrough like this I could set up. Now, I did choose to do this playthrough because other playthroughs I thought of, I don't think would have been, I think they would have been even less fun, I guess, or they would have worn off their novelty for me more quickly. But this one I feel like is interesting because it has qualities that I could see enjoying as a sort of update to the direction of the project. You know, let me give you another example. Let's say you wanted to make an Elden Ring playthrough series and you thought of an idea for what to do for it, and you imagined making one video, one big long edited video that was the whole experience of playing through the playthrough. You might very easily end up in that position that I just described, where by the time you finish making all of that, you might be quite bored of the playthrough. Well, one solution that I have been trying to employ with this stream is to put yourself in the position where there's going to be kind of, let's just call them checkpoints, I guess, in the production, where, yeah, throughout my time making these streams, I'm periodically, because I'm doing them in sections, not all in one big chunk, going to change direction a little bit. So if I get bored, I mean, it's not really valuable for you to see the whole thing uncut if I got bored, right? It's better to adjust it. There will be parts of this stream where by the mid game I say, I have good status spells. I want, like, it's going to end up being a lot more about weapons. And the arcane scaling weapons available are a pile of jank. Like, whoa, boy. I don't feel like that's directly related to the playthrough we're doing, but you might want it to be by the time we get to the middle, right? And I feel like that adds a lot of texture to these projects. The not knowing what is going to come out on the other side of the project and then changing it is, I think, the key to the situation, and creates something that's really fun for other people to see too. I personally don't see a whole lot of value in, like, it was just a pile of work and you did it from start to finish, and our society praises these things. They say you persevered and that's admirable, or like it was a lot of hard work and that's inherently valuable for some reason. According to me, no, it's not. It's valuable if it creates value, and it stopped creating value along the way. So I can see what you mean. I see how a mix of your own creation and generative AI could be seen as a way to reconcile that. But I think there are also other ways to reconcile it. I'm not sure if I've done a good job explaining that. And you might just disagree, of course, but that's interesting. Wording it that way is fascinating, I think. I'm now going to get a third memory stone by skipping Stormvale. I'm just going to run along the road, and there's like a passage in the mountains that lets you get past Stormvale. So I'm going to do that. I actually didn't know we weren't at Liurnia yet. Or I mean, in normal progression, we're not at Liurnia yet because we haven't killed Godric, but I knew that. But I didn't realize we hadn't run there. It's very helpful to do that. So I'm going to do that. And we're having a good conversation, so I want something like that to do. There's a good amount of the early to mid game in Elden Ring where you can just run around and gain substantial benefits for your character. So this is a good chance to do that. The discussion that Ragnavar, you seem extremely upset by the fact that Asymptomatic finds the idea of generative AI appealing, and it seems to me that the reason is that you feel like it's a single-minded view of what it could be like to make art, or a way to solve that problem. And I don't know, if I may, I think that the idea that just because Asymptomatic suggested this, that means that we will assume that that is the only approach to resolving that tension that they will entertain is unfair. I admit I also did that. Definitely. I had that reaction. But that's all I have to say. I'm not saying it's bad to, I'm not saying it's bad to question the reasoning, so I won't defend myself about that anymore. I think that's excellent, but I feel that there is an element of there's sort of something wrong to the general public about even suggesting that it could even be interesting as one solution to feeling that way, to ever interact with any other way of doing things other than like linearly artistically making them. And I do also think it's valid to say in our sadly limited human lives that, you know, I might enjoy this or that like artistic pursuit, but I'm not going to spend the thousands of hours it would take to create it before I have any idea if I would like it. I think that if you look at this a different way, as sort of looking before you leap, that could be very wise, though I'm not sure. I think that's for me. I don't want to put words in Asymptomatic's mouth, nor give you credit for an argument you didn't make. But I just wanted to say that I think it is worth entertaining the idea. There's nothing scary or harmful about discussing it, at least according to me. One of my, I know not everyone has seen that parlay, one of the theses, is that the plural? In that parlay was this idea that it is better, even if you want nobody to ever use generative AI for everything, for people to be discussing this. I think people are often kind of hesitant to allow it to be discussed. And Ragnavar, I should apologize to you. I think I'm unfairly putting you in that camp. So that's wrong of me. I'm sorry. Just to say that I think it can still be valuable to think about. I mean, if there are other ways to do it, then it's good to consider those options. But it's also, obviously, there's a giant pile of problems with like everything surrounding generative AI that, again, I assume the audience knows in this discussion. Asymptomatic, to give an example, you said to use cooking as an example. I have a low tolerance for multi-hour recipes because it takes longer to cook than to consume. I do not have a particularly trained palate, but I'm fairly confident in tracing forward the effect of non-exotic ingredients. So to me, cooking is a compromise between simple preparation and nutrition. Thankfully, I do not get bored of food often. Yeah, I mean, I do have a response to that. Like, to some extent, I see what you mean. It is a talent, I believe, when you cook, to look at a list of ingredients or like a way that a recipe is constructed and think to yourself, do I need to make this to have any idea what it tastes like? And the answer is frequently no. No. You can know, maybe you really don't like an ingredient, or that combination of ingredients is simple enough that I can imagine what it would be like, I guess. I often feel this way about builds or games too. I feel like I can sort of see, well, what is very likely, we'll come back to that in a second, the lineage that the game is coming from, and I sort of know I don't like that, like I'm not interested in what the game is going for. Sometimes I see a game and it's pretty clear that the game wants you to sink huge amounts of hours into it to use only raw mechanical physical skill to beat your opponent, and I don't think that's like bad, but I don't enjoy that. I've done it before and I don't like it. Occasionally, every so often, I try it again, and now and again when I do that, I'm pleasantly surprised. But I definitely think it is, I am correct that I mostly do not like that. I don't think it's wrong to assume that the process would mostly be something you wouldn't like. I mean, a charitable version of the thing you're saying, Asymptomatic, is something everybody must do. Everyone is required to do that to exist in reality. You can't watch every YouTube video recommended to you that you'd be interested in, etc. It seems to me, Ragnavar, if I could try to interpret your objection to that way of thinking, it's partly just that there is an element where also nobody can go all the way in the other direction, right? Like the spice of life includes some skepticism that like maybe you don't know what the fun or the benefit of this thing would be. And I'm sure you're not suggesting that either, Asymptomatic. It's funny, you try new things all the time. I feel like people don't get that from these comments. But I know from, I guess, mostly your parlay that you do, actually try new stuff all the time. Do we have to go really far north to get up there? I always get confused when I get to this area. Let's go there, and let me get rid of my other pin. Which is where? Can you reset all pins? Is there a way to do that? Okay, it's that way. They're both that way. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I was just vaguely putting one for where the map marker was. Let's just run straight to my existing marker. Why is there a 2 now? I know this is ridiculous, but this part of the game sometimes frustrates me. I just want to know where I'm going. Elden Ring is a game where you can never walk straight somewhere, you know? Anyway, right. It seems to me like the tension here is between the idea that surely you don't think that it's necessary to try everything manually before deciding how you might feel about it, projecting what you might feel about a thing you haven't fully understood, and accepting that you don't know for sure is fine. Very much like how I am equally able to respect anyone who says, like, I don't think I'm gonna like spicy ramen, so I don't want to try it, as I am to criticize if someone were to say, I know I don't like it, even though I haven't tried it. Like, there's no reason to need to say it that way. So I guess I'll just leave well enough alone. But like, why? People have a real tendency to do this, and it is probably partly because some people are just assholes about people's taste, right? And won't take no for an answer. But in an intellectual forum, it is only advantageous to keep your mind open to the idea that you probably could like this or that thing, while accepting that, yeah, okay, but for now, I'm not going to try. I'm making the educated guess that I'm not interested. At the same time, obviously that can only go so far. Like, you can't just say that about everything. To an extent, life requires some gambles on whether you would like something. Am I going the right way still? Yeah, sort of. I want to get up here because there's, I believe, an incantation in this line that is relevant to me. That might be wrong. I was also thinking about Bloodflame Blade. We'll get back to it in a minute. But anyway, I want this part of the map open to us, so. Yeah, I think the cooking example is good. Asymptomatic to conclude, I was just going to say that I also disagree a little bit, though. Specifically, you said, you know, I'm fairly confident in tracing the effect of non-exotic ingredients. Yeah, I mean, fairly confident is a way of expressing that I think is reasonable. I just feel like some of the time there are weird combinations, like the whole, when you want a food to taste really savory and umami, there's this chart of foods that have the one chemical component of things being really umami, and then the other chemical component of things being really umami. And sometimes that involves quite unintuitive foods that when you combine them will make a food taste way more savory for no obvious reason. Like, there isn't a way to know that. There's also just like surprisingly novel combinations of flavors. Just the other night I had, maybe we'll do this on the stream tomorrow for the tea time stream. Just the other night I had half and half cactus water, prickly pear cactus water, and pressed coconut, fluids, kind of between coconut water and cream of coconut, I guess is what that is. Anyway, half and half, pressed coconut, and like a rich coconut water, and cactus water, a prickly pear cactus juice. And it was amazing. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. I was like kind of out of it because I had a terrible day yesterday. Stressful, awful personal life day. Has nothing to do with work. And I thought I would just what is there to lose today? You have those days before, you know what I'm talking about. And it was really good, and I felt kind of ashamed for myself for thinking it was going to be so bad. I don't know, I have experience with these things. If I thought it was a good idea, there's an okay chance it was going to be good, right? That was Briars of Sin, which is not an incantation we can use. It is a sorcery, though it does scale with faith. This is a very weird spell. I just forgot what that enemy drops and thought, oh yeah, they drop a unique something spellcasting, and I thought I would kill them. Makes no never mind. Anyway, just to say that it's a balance, and I would imagine that most of us accept that and perceive a balance. We don't reject things we're not sure we won't like every time, nor do we accept them every time. You can't do that. And the only possible solution to that mental dissonance is that we must all think we're balancing it a good way, and none of us know exactly what way is good to balance that. And I think that's fine. But yeah, I mean, just to summarize, and Mr. Food, since you came in the middle, we were just talking about Asymptomatic's generative AI related parlay the other day. And if I could summarize what perhaps Asymptomatic was suggesting was the value of that, it is simply that in a world where you can't spend the time to learn those pursuits, it can be very valuable in theory to use a tool to help you like estimate whether you're going to like that pursuit in the long run. I proposed that people who decide they will like it will probably want to do it manually themselves and will eventually conclude that there's no real value in having parts of it done for them. But there will be steps in that process, and I think it is those about which we would all disagree. But like if you're interested in making music and you generate most of it and then write lyrics, for example, to see if you enjoy that process, I think that makes eminent sense. And helpfully, if you don't claim that music is yours, that you made it, that is also a nice way to sidestep most of the problems with generative AI. I'm happy for any way that it can be used for humans to make more art. And that's, I guess, my clash with Ragnavar. I understand what you mean, that it's like it's replacing a lot of people making art. But you can use it in a way where you could be expressing more. That is possible, in my opinion. But I'm sure no one's going to agree with that. So I'll just leave that there. As someone who's a very big, what do I want to say, detractor of the generative AI trend as a whole, I was happy to see what I think is an interesting line of thought about the general subject. There are also other tools, of course, right? I used a tool that I think I briefly mentioned in that parlay that was, I believe, a mathematical tool that made only instrumental music, just using algorithms. Obviously, generative AI is kind of just algorithms, but like just using scales and math with some entropy in it, not the current type of like large language model thing we're doing now. At least that's as far as I understood the tool. And it was a long time ago, so I kind of doubt it was like secretly way ahead of its time generative AI, right? It probably was what it said it was. And it was different. Like if you, and we could do this sometime, if you analyze the music that spat out and some generative AI music, there, music theory wise, there are some strange, like really interesting differences in the results of doing those two things. That's very interesting. Again, were I doing something completely different with my career, we would just derail this whole stream right now and talk about that, because I think that's fascinating and strange about these crack shot hunter people. Do not molest me in this manner. No. Ow. Stop. They're so accurate. You might be thinking, oh, Zandy, just like swerve, take evasive action. It doesn't work. Those bolts move at the speed of sound. These people have rail guns. It's crazy. What a brutal set of enemies. Back-mounted glow sticks. Love it. That's exactly what I always wanted. Bear. Those bears chase you for a while, too. They'll mess you up. Anyway, the main goal with that parlay was just to get to discuss the subject without, if I could be blunt, all of the baggage that it usually comes with, because I feel it is better to be able to discuss and be skeptical of the subject without roping in like all of the possible evils it can inflict upon humanity. Mostly because people just already know what those are, I think. But I'm not saying I don't think those things are bad either. I hope no one takes this out of context and acts like I want generative AI everywhere. I obviously don't. It's very clear why that's bad. I mean, and there are also a lot of reasons that I think that people say a lot that it's less clear are bad. I guess that's true. But it's the main thing about human expression is to express your humanity. And I think that a lot of people replacing their interest in expressing with like thinking that it is good to have made like something they just had auto-generated is a mental step back. Like, people will need to unlearn that. And so it's sort of frustrating that our culture has gotten hung up on that. I do also think a huge, often mentioned, but like undersold aspect of the situation is that a lot of people's discussions about this subject boil down to money and employment, which is a concern in our current society, but doesn't make it any more philosophically valid or invalid, you know, to do the thing. For example, I can say until I'm blue in the face that people should want to express just for their own expression. But if you have no money and you think you could make money by abusing generative AI, like, I don't want you to have no money. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's not a good way to do it. And people can turn around and say it the other way. Like, it's also, we live in a culture where we still have a lingering kind of addiction to the virtue of work for its own sake. Hard work, even when it doesn't really make sense, is still very heavily admired in our society over efficiency. And that gives people a bias against generative AI. There are good reasons to be biased against generative AI, but I'm not sure that is one of them. You see what I mean? But no one's going to accept that. I just think it's interesting how a lot of I completely relate to the feeling like, okay, but when people discuss this conversation, they never actually get into, you know, yada, yada, yada. So I related very strongly to you wanting to ask it, asymptomatic. That was fun. I think it's fun to hear someone discussing this. Hey, look, new boots. That spell's range is insane. Did you see that? I just did Dragon Ice and it hit like the whole universe. What is that? I didn't know the range of that was so... It's huge. Look at that. What is that? I've used this before. Like in my other playthrough, I had this spell. Like, since when does it hit in that range? That's crazy. This guy sells smithing stones and can upgrade your stuff. So that's why we ended up here. It does use somber smithing stones. Okay. In some ways, I feel like that's good. There are two different types of weapon upgrades in Elden Ring. There are the ones that take normal smithing stones, and for those you would need like smithing stone 1, then you need more smithing stone 1, then you need more than that smithing stone 1s, and then you go to smithing stone 2, 3 more sets of smithing stone 2, then you go to smithing stone 3, etc. And then there's somber smithing stone, where you just need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In some ways you could argue this is then easier. If you have just one of the correct tier, then you can upgrade the thing. I feel like this is one of the worst parts of Elden Ring in general, though. So I'm going to have some salt to sit on about this subject. A surprising amount of the playthrough we're going to do together is going to be hung up in like doing a scavenger hunt for all of the item that allows you to buy as many smithing stones as you want. Because if you don't do that, then you will get lots of loot throughout the game and a lot of smithing stones throughout the game that you can't actually use because you won't be able to upgrade them all the way. For example, let's say that I have infinite of every somber smithing stone except for 3. Well, I can only use 1 and 2 because I can't get to 4 because I need 3. It's a very weirdly stingy and stringent upgrade system that I don't, you know, it also has a little bit of the cyberpunk energy where Cyberpunk 2077 released this update a while ago that was like, try out new builds. And it's like, well, I can't do that really because I don't have 50 hours to do a whole new playthrough and you can't respec. Well, you can respec 1 time per account, but you know, the game doesn't include the ability to respec by default. It's not a problem for me. I'll just mod in the ability to respec. But like, it's a little weird that the game advertises a thing you could do that would be fun that you like, they prevent you from doing when you play the game. Like, you can't actually do that. That's strange. And it's sort of like it is here. Like, you get late game rewards. And having an upgrade system like this is really good because in theory it means you can make everything be balanced at a certain baseline. When you get a piece of equipment out of order, it's not just like weaker or stronger. Everything had a baseline level and then you upgrade it up to whatever level you're at. Great. That means when you find things, no matter what order you find them in, they'll be as good as they were going to be. except that you won't be able to upgrade them unless you go find basically all of the bell bearings, is what they're called, that let you buy infinite smithing stones. Because if you don't do that, then even if you have all of the bell bearings that let you buy infinite smithing stones except for one, you won't be able to use all of the ones that you have at later ranks because you'll be blocked by that wall of the one you don't have. I just think that is very bad and like sort of easy to fix. Like they could just make them all be a similar type of smithing stone and you just need more and more of them, something like that. I don't know. It's weird and frustrating. On the bright side, it seems like this is very cheap to upgrade, and EG does sell infinite somber smithing stone 1 and 2. So that does give us a little early game way to do that. Let's boof a few runes and quick credit card transaction, and I'll pick that up. Indeed, EG, indeed. Please upgrade my seal. No somber smithing stone 3. Yeah. So one of the things I'll add to the list to do is get somber bell bearing for 3 and 4. I believe that's how it works. They come in pairs like that. So we'll need to... I'll look up and find, and then we'll go get wherever that is. Again, the actual content itself, I have no problem with. Like, that's fine. We'll just have fun doing it. That's okay. But it is a little weird that to actually use a variety of upgrades in the game, like, you do need to just do a side thing of going into all these dungeons, and players could easily not know that existed. Again, it's another one of those things where it's part of the game. Like, a lot of the core experience involves that, but for some reason it was treated or framed as if it is not part of the core experience, and I don't... That's weird to me. You might experiment like a really, really, really small amount with builds, and then you might not ever run up against that limitation. And that's okay. But I would argue with the amount of times the game says, hey, do this challenge and then we'll give you a reward, and the reward is something you can only use if you go on that scavenger hunt for the bell bearings. Yeah, you see what I mean? All right, we got Liurnia's map done. Nice timing goo. And then there's a tower. There's a lot of towers around here, but a lot of them require a gesture to open. You have to do Rea Lucaria. I think it's this one and this one, but that might be wrong. This you can't get to until a lot later, so we can ignore that. There's a couple of Everjails that we can do. There's the 4 Belfries. We could do that. Let's do that. We just need to do some stuff to get enough money to level up a little bit. I can use Dragon Claw, and we can get back in business. We just need to do some content. Fight some bosses. Solvable Iowa, welcome back. You were also saying, right, it's also weird about that upgrade system that the upgrades are a series of rocks that have a very similar model. Like, why? Why would you do that? What are you doing to me, From Software? Like, why do they have the same... How did I miss this? Cool. Yeah, I was going to say, I think that second tower, the one in southwest Liurnia, you actually can just jump in on Torrent. So let's try to do that. I'm just going to blaze through this camp. There's probably a chest in here. Okay. Runark Classic. I have no... There is a chest here. How much you want to bet this isn't something that's going to be relevant to our playthrough? Okay. You know. That's fine. There are worse rewards to get. Get me out of here. Go. You know what we really need to do also is get like a usable flask. That should be on the list of things to do. Jellyfish Shield, don't think that's going to come up that much. Anyway, I'm glad you liked the parlay asymptomatic, and I also think it's really nice. You often give, when we do your parlay, you often give some notes about your analysis of why it was good, like what I did in the parlay that was good. I have had some hours of anxiety about like what makes parlay good. Like, how do you do it good? I do it all the time, but part of my business is that I feel a lot of people, mostly artists, which I'm not sure I would totally count myself among, have a tendency to settle for being able to have done the thing. They don't push further to why is it good, you know? There are examples of game studios saying, you know, we figured if we just keep trying and do what we did last time, the magic will kick in and it'll work out. And it's like, okay, but I think that is the lowest form of creative work. You know, to me, it's sort of weird to say this, I guess, but I think that the most interesting form of doing this kind of thing for a living, when you can really do it, is when you have a sort of study of what makes it tick. This might sound very uncreative to some people. I want to suggest that sometimes people do this in a way that isn't really what I mean, but it is very similar. They figure out how to get themselves to put out the thing reliably. Rather than analyzing how to make lightning strike twice, they just very heavily analyze how they got lightning to strike them twice, which is different from saying, I hope lightning strikes twice again, but also isn't the same as saying, I'm going to learn how to get lightning to strike twice in the same place. You see what I mean? They go, okay, in great detail, this is what I did to myself to make lightning strike me twice in a row. Like, that is still a type of engagement with this. People will say, oh, I work best when I write in my bathtub, you know? Whatever, sure. There's a part of me that wants to say, okay, but like, you definitely don't need to write it in your bathtub. Like, it would be really beneficial to not need to write it in your bathtub. But that's still a type of engaging with the subject, you know? I feel it is fiscally irresponsible, if not just artistically uninteresting, to not engage with like, how does the art come out, you know? That you can do that, you know, there are reasons. I know that for many people, the reason they don't do that is because they don't believe there are reasons. They don't think those reasons exist. And that is wrong, but that's okay that people think that. It's just too bad. They most certainly, there are reasons why it exists. So yeah, I don't know. And anyway, just to say asymptomatic, that this is something you have always been quite keyed into. This is a very valuable thing about your input, is your interest in, okay, but like what was good about the parlay, you know? Not just did I like it, was my reaction that did I like it? To be brutal in the privacy of our conversation on stream, I don't care that much if people like things in and of themselves. But it is interesting when people can say, well, I liked this because this or that, or I didn't like this because this or that. Asymptomatic, you said, I'm personally impressed that the captain set aside time for the Daijobu bridge twice, despite me not providing the raw text. I've been listening to the song a lot. I thought it was a really interesting, mostly for that music theory thing I was gesturing at before. With my background in music theory, some of you might know I almost did something totally different for a living and I was accepted to a college that had a very good electronic music production program. And I did a lot of that in high school. And I went to a very unique high school, and I didn't do that because I reasoned that later in life I could always just come back to electronic music. I think that's true. That was wise. I think that was a good choice. But you know, the English major isn't worthwhile either, so I'm not sure. You can really call that a win, right? Juke. There we go. No. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Torrent. Good job. Praise the double jump on Torrent. Okay, there we go. Give me that money. Yeah. All right, that's probably enough memory stones. So I listen to it a lot, asymptomatic. That's why I was able so easily to reference. Also, it's a funny line because it's the vocals for the like whenever I'm lost, whenever I'm alone, but it's okay because you're here. I forget the exact lyrics now, ironically. And you know what I mean, that line in the bridge of that AI song. It's funny because the vocals are really intense, but it's like the single most stereotypical possible romance song line in human history. But I kind of think goes like right off the bottom to go back on the top of being amazing because it's so overdone. I don't know. I think that's sort of like delightful. It's such a weirdly epic, like almost in the wrong place, but I kind of love that it's in that place. Time for the vocals to be like that. Very chaotic. Very pretty shot of Liurnia. I don't feel like a fight against this tree spirit is going to go well now, but let's just see where we are. Shall we? Yeah, let's just like benchmark. Let me kill some of the guys around. And let's just see how we're doing. Because we spend a lot of this stream just kind of, you know, we're getting settled. That's how it is. That was gonna be what we were gonna do on this stream the whole time. That's fine. That damage was pretty legit. Okay. Yikes. I didn't increase my arcane by that much. Anyway. What are 17, you know, okay. It's unupgraded. Well, it's just the weapon art anyway. Okay. Yeah, let's put a pause here and say boss battle thing. Mr. Fruit, you said sometimes when listening to music I feel like an autocomplete myself. Some generic lyrics should be banned for how boring they are. I do really like as a prompt idea, like that the AI generated song humorously inspires me to think of, okay, the prompt is sing generic lyrics and do everything in your power to make it still entertaining. You know what I mean? You have to say, there's this, I think XKCD book as a joke that is like explaining rocket science using only the 50 or some very low number, most common words in the English language. Okay, take only the 50 most common lines of lyric in romance music and like you have to make the song only out of those. Make it as weird as possible with that restriction. Actually sounds kind of rad if I didn't know any better. Mr. Fruit, have you been plagued by a similar... There's lyrics in chat that I won't besmirch this conversation by trying to sing. But I have a truly abhorrent singing voice. You don't want me to, believe me. So yeah, let's just kill a man. Tree guy. Now, I believe, and you might have to remind me right after this, I believe that we did not kill this air tree spirit. This is the one I'm always praising, isn't it? That's like, maybe none of you ever heard me say this before? I don't know. This is the one I always remember, I think it is, that has the bubble tier and the HP regen thing together, which I think is a really good early game pickup. Like you get a lot for a little, and it's not very hard. You know, it's easy to beat. I think that's that one. This one I don't know or care what it gives. Jellyfish for some poison, though we do have a poison incantation now. And then I'm gonna fire Rot Breath and then Dragon Ice, and we're gonna see how we do. Scarlet Rot this early in the game could be like really dirty. I have not experienced that before, so we'll see. I also have not really used this, so okay, I low profiled somehow. Did I get him? Do I need another? That takes a huge amount of FP. Holy shit. Okay. We're good. Okay. Jellyfish, just one more second. Let me just do a little more status. Yeah. I think that's done it. Yes, it has. It's that like turd looking color. And now ice. Okay, we're out of mana. Let's do this. Go, 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 go. We did a ton of damage over time. It's gonna be fine. Okay. We're good, we're good, we're good. Just get him with the, hit him with the pointy end, you know? Okay. The roll catch. We're on the board, folks. I got roll caught. That was pretty close. The damage over time damage is indeed impressive. Very nice. These guys for sure are some of the guys of all time. Yeah, it's weird. It would be interesting to analyze why are these, like, they're not, I don't think they're really that hard though, but it's just weird because you fight a lot of them over the course of the game, right? I've beaten Elden Ring once through, so I've fought these like almost 10 times, right? Why do I still get hit by them so often? I don't know. I guess I'm being a little greedy still. This is kind of always the first line of defense, right? Asymptomatic, you said, this nickel and diming mildly displeases me. I need my chonky numbers, like with Echoes of an from Genshin Impact. Asymptomatic, you will be pleased to hear that most of this build is big chunks, because really our sustained damage on a build like this is blood loss. We're just going to set up damage over time and then trigger blood loss as many times as possible. It is like the game plan for this kind of build is pretty straightforward. Put a pin in it for probably quite a few streams from now on Frostbite, and then you use fire damage to reset Frostbite. That like might be a good fit for this build. I don't know. I have actually never tried that, despite it being a very stereotypical like tip in Elden Ring, that you can cleanse Frostbite and thus trigger it again, which like I guess would do good damage. I don't know why people want to do that, but that is a thing you can do. Gonna get interrupted, but I hopefully still got one gout of poison off. Anyway, just to say, most of this build's damage in practice is going to be big old chunks. But I also just kind of got to get used to it. We got a big hit of Frostbite earlier, so let's try for that again as well. That was a really big chunk here. Yeah, it triggers it in one go, I think is what happened. Wow. And then Frostbite doesn't stack unless you cleanse it by doing fire damage. I need to assign more flasks to mana. But as the build is now, we could probably just dodge this enemy for the next 2 minutes and we would win the fight. We've got the Scarlet Rot, we've got increased damage on the Scarlet Rot because of Frostbite, and then we have, let me get my runes back, and then and then we get okay, evasive action from these, or they're gonna kill my jellyfish, that's fine. But like that alone and the damage of time buys us so much time that it's like you're kind of just good only with that, you know? Which is like a big slice of cheese for early game bosses. Like I'm pretty sure that's just dead. It's so much HP based damage over time. Now the reason it does such good damage is partly, again, because it's doing HP based damage over time, which all of the status effects in Elden Ring do. That is one of the choices ever made. Like why, you know? I do not understand, and that is one of the goals of this playthrough. I do not understand why, from a game design perspective, they chose to have all the status effects do percent max HP damage. Like that has some very strange consequences. Like why was that done? I think that's really weird that they did that. Let's add that to the board actually. Why are the statuses percent max HP? And I do want to say, as I always do with topics like this, that it's not like I would be uninterested if somebody were to say like, oh, Miyazaki in an interview said it's because of this. But just because the developer who made the game says like, this is the public facing reason I will tell you, doesn't mean that that is the only valid or valuable interpretation of what happened. Like, I kind of don't care what they officially say is why. It's much more important to decide, do I think that is a good game design decision and why or why not? But I would still be interested to hear that. I just kind of like Death of the Author. The author telling me what the book is about is just one other person's interpretation of what the book is about. Like, even if you think, well, I want to know what they were thinking when they wrote the book, only they can know that. Yeah, but also they too cannot know that. Like, in no way can the author know exactly what they thought while they were making the book. So if that's the answer you want, there really is no answer to that question. But of course, the point is to learn game design, not to like just hear their answer. I don't really care what the actual answer is. I guess I did kill this tree spirit. Let's see if I have I should have checked if I had the tears first. I do have them. Yeah. Huh. I just didn't swap. Yeah, so the tree we just went to has both this tier, which basically just blocks a hit of damage. That's not exactly what it does, but it basically just negates a hit of damage, which against bosses like that, you can imagine when I got roll caught, I wouldn't have died instead of dying. And then this is HP regen. In Elden Ring, sources of HP regen don't stack, which is odd, or at least almost all of them don't. So if you were to get a spell, we actually saw it a few minutes ago at the Church of Vows from Muriel, the big turtle pope. That is an incantation that gives you health regen that we will conceivably have the stats for in the mid game. That does not stack with this. I would probably take the incantation and then swap in something else here. But for now, I think it's really good. The fact that you get both of those from the same tree and it's an early game one is really good. If you pick up the Flask of Wondrous Physic here and then pick up the 2 basic tiers here, I think you get one while you're here too. I don't think any of those are all that amazing, but then you can just go here and get 2 that are very universally helpful. Very nice. What do you mean you don't like the ulcerated tree spirit, the objectively best boss? It must be there everywhere, so FromSoft must be real proud of them. Sarcasm, yes. And there are some reskins that have like a, corrupted version of abilities. I think it's fine. I mean, I like a lot of people have a common criticism of Elden Ring is that there's a lot of quote reused content in the game. And I feel like that is an example of the like fetishism of hard work that I was describing before being an actual problem. Like some people might be thinking, why are you trying to get people to take lazy shortcuts? I'm not. This is an example of the kind of thing I mean. There is so much content in this game. There are so many bosses, so many interesting weapons with unique abilities, so many unique enemies, just basic enemies. I don't really understand why people have so much of a problem with there being like, also, there are a lot of mines, and that helps indicate to you, though in a woefully inadequate way, it at least tries to indicate to you that those are places you can get the bell bearings to unlock the infinite smithing stones of various ranks. Stuff like that. Like, it's not inherently bad for something to be an efficient decision. You know what I mean? That people's rejection of, oh, they copy-pasted this boss, even though the game has a ridiculous amount of unique stuff, borders on saying that efficiency is bad just because it was less raw work. And it's like, okay, but like if the effect isn't that bad, except if you just hate those bosses, that's fine. But that's not a complaint about they reuse the boss. That's a complaint about that boss being bad, or they chose to reuse a boss you don't like. Which I don't think any of you are making that complaint. I'm just saying I feel I've heard to that amount complaints a lot. If you hear a complaint from people saying, oh yeah, this game has so much reused content, and then you play this game, your jaw will drop to the floor with confusion about that statement. Like, what? It doesn't. This is like the game of all time that has the least problem with that, I feel like. I just think that's a very strange, again, seems like misapplied ideology type of complaint. So I thought I would speak ill of it. Can I just backstab this guy and get a bunch of money really easily? Yeah. Oh. And Mr. Food, not to have baited you, I hope you'll accept my apology for doing so. You said I would prefer them not to just not put the enemies in the game in the first place. Make the game smaller and don't copy paste enemies. And this is the reasonable response, right? You can imagine someone saying, well, sure, Zandy, but I just want the game to be shorter instead. I want to make the argument that it is valuable to have some amount of enemies that recur, and then the question is just how often is an enemy recurring good, like before it's bad. I could see in that analysis the argument that, okay, yeah, but like some of these bosses come back often enough that, yeah, you know what to expect when you get to a new minor erd tree. So that's a thing, but like, does there need to be like not multiple forms of it? You know, like there is another form of the tree spirit, but it's not used that much. Like that could be an example of a manifestation of that complaint. Like it doesn't feel like, if the goal was to maximize expectations while maximizing variety, it doesn't feel like this game did that. And I'm not trying to be disingenuous about that. It was my intent to lead up to that point. I think you mostly make a good point. I think you could absolutely make a game that was more focused, but was still really vast, for sure. You know, Elden Ring is a game that has a huge amount of unique things to do, great, but also really fetishizes like volume of content, which is not great because there are infinite good games you could be playing. You will never finish them all in your life. So it is inherently bad for a game to be long for that reason. And then it's bad for a game to be short in that you need some time to build up and get used to games. There is therefore arguably a kind of ideal length of game. And you could argue that Elden Ring is, in that analysis, padded, perhaps. Personally, it just doesn't bother me that much, but this is about discussing the game design of the situation. It doesn't matter if it bothered me or not. It matters like to the extent that it's true. And I think to some extent it is true. Yeah. I think that there is a lot of stuff that is repeated. I could see that. I do think there's an ongoing conversation, a big complaint of mine as well, that this is a game that offers you a huge amount of entertainment, but makes it like weirdly hard to get sometimes. Like, and I don't know why they do that. A lot of stuff in this game is already, you know, stimulatingly challenging to kill. And so what's the need really to have it be that, I don't know, like you can never get anywhere in a straight line, you know, things like that. It doesn't really matter that much, you could say, but like in aggregate, it spends you a lot of time. Time that will probably lead to good pacing for this stream, but go figure, right? While we're talking about this, there's a cave. Where's that cave? Is it here, maybe? There's a cave that has the Uchigatana, which I thought would be kind of a good weapon for this build. That I remember being... It's close by, I think. But I don't remember exactly where. I don't think it's here. I feel like it's here? I don't know. Yeah, let's try that. Anyway, just to say, and there's also, it's a different matter that a lot of bosses in Elden Ring are apparently from other FromSoft games. I do think that is like its own and is a separate issue. I'm not saying you can't discuss it, of course, it's fine. Just to say, I do think it's fair to evaluate the game by itself. I do think that Elden Ring has a unique quirk, which is that I would imagine for many people, the more Souls-likes you've played, the worse this is in some ways, which is like, that's kind of a weird problem for a game to have. Like, that's sort of bad. But I do also think it still like matters to allow the game its own merits. I like the look of this for fashion, but I'm not going to use it this playthrough. Elden Ring, like every game of its scale, is a compromise. I just question what was compromised and for what reason. Sure, yeah, that's very well put. I think that is exactly the issue. And personally, I do also feel a lot of the problems are not a compromise. Like it could easily just be the best version in both ways, and there isn't really any reason they didn't do it. Again, this game is really interesting and useful to discuss from a build making perspective, I remembered it's here. I'm pretty sure that's where the thing I'm looking for is. This is a game that, from one perspective, is more vulnerable to the weakness that the industry has with build systems. Like, it's not really its fault. Good, there is a lot of potential for enjoyable build making. Bad, simply by dint of having a lot of potential for good build making, the state of the industry regarding build systems is more of a problem for this game, and they didn't really do anything to fix that. I guess you can respec a good amount of times, but even then, that's kind of a idiosyncratic system, how you respec in this game. Is there going to be an invader out here? Yes. Blow some farts downwind. Oh. Chug, chug, chug. Okay. And now we get him. We go in. Oh, big damage. Beautiful, beautiful. Get him out of there. Build works like a charm every single time. Co-op items, which I won't be using, but that's fine. Yeah, the breath was insanely OP in that situation. That the range is ridiculous on that ability. Like, that's amazing. I thought that was going to be a lot more of a pain to use for a lot of this playthrough. It's not really. That's going to be fine, I think. Yeah, holy shit, that was some good breath damage. All right, I'm pretty sure that cave I was talking about is down here. Or like around nearby-ish here. Down there, maybe? Yeah. Up a squad, eh? Pretty sure I just oversteeped my tea to hell and back, but a quick break. A fine oolong for the stream today. I put this on when we were fighting the boss because I thought I was going to die to it more times, and then I forgot because we won pretty much immediately. And that's bad because this is kind of nice tea. I don't drink a lot of expensive tea on this stream, but this is it's really very cheap in the grand scheme of things. But for me, it's expensive tea. Expensive tea for my frame of reference is like 50 cents a gram. So that's in the teapot is 3.5 grams today. So that's $1.50, $1.75, which it's not expensive, but I mean, I have tea I really like the taste of that is 10 cents a gram. That is, 30 cents for 35 cents for that teapot. So by comparison, it's much more expensive, but obviously $1.50 for that will make 4 or so steeps of tea is not expensive. Like, that's still fine. The white cup disrupts the color balance so much. Ooh, that's so bad. Yeah, it's very badly overbrewed. And it's good quality tea, so the leaves are stronger, which means when you overbrew it, it tastes even worse because it's more overbrewed. You got more flavor out. Ooh, that's so bad. Okay, let me, it's laughably bad. It's funny because it's like you can still taste that it would have tasted good, but it just doesn't. Like that. Ooh, that's not good. Let me, humor me and let me re-steep. Oh, hey there. Tee-hee, nice timing. Tea indeed. Boo. Boo. Keep the heat in. Topic of Elden Ring being more and or less than the sum of its parts has come up, which is inevitable, of course. I definitely think both are true. There's lots of parts of the game where Ragnavar, you said, I think Elden Ring is greater than the sum of its parts, but not for everyone, as it has compromises that occasionally show up more than they could have been had FromSoft just had a little more money and time to make the game just that little bit better. Mr. Fruit, you said, that's funny because Elden Ring feels like less than the sum of its mostly mediocre parts to me. I'm obviously in the minority with this opinion, but also far from alone. Yeah, sure, lots of people think both. I think it's very clearly both of those things are true. There are elements of the game that are definitely are having something added to them, should the player want that thing, because the game is like an open world Souls-like. That is a very good combination for some things, I think. But there's also some parts of it that are definitely less than the sum of its parts. Even just within this one stream, the upgrade system thing. For all of this game's variety of good stuff to upgrade, the upgrade system like reverses a lot of that benefit. You're now frustrated that you cannot upgrade many of the things you get. And that wouldn't be as much of a problem if the game was just smaller and there were less things. But because the game is broad, it matters that the upgrade system be like workable, and it's sort of not, in my opinion. Again, you can just go get all the bell bearings, which is probably what we're gonna do. Maybe next time, let's do that. I think that's pretty much what's happening, right? What's for dinner? But yeah, I'll let me dump that bit of tea, and then we can talk about the like more and less than sum of parts. Does that fit in the topic bubble? Oh yeah, perfect fit. Just 1 second. The bathroom's right there. Just take 2 seconds. Overbrewed. Rip in peace that tea flavor, but these leaves have probably got still more to go for. Of course, in this kind of discussion, we're going to end up spending some time pairing apart the parts of the game that are things that different people would consider good or bad, and things in the game that are like can't have your cake and eat it too situations, you know? For the game to be big and contain depths, and for there to be a lot of stuff in the game, you do have to make the game kind of less focused a lot of the time. You might be able to make a game that can do both, but it would be hard, you know? Annihilating that skeleton with the ice breath made me remember that we need to assign more flasks to mana. So let me go do that. You know, there will be some parts where, for example, the bosses being reused from previous Souls games. That's something that could easily not affect you at all if you just hadn't played those games, and then if you had, it would affect you. But there's also things like the upgrade system where it could easily not affect you if you just really don't swap weapons in and out, if you don't try a lot of weapons. The upgrade system might not be very noticeable to you, but it will be if you do. But there's a difference there, right? If you've played the other Souls-likes versus you haven't, there's not really right or wrong or a thing the game makes a statement on. If the developer said, we're taking a game design course and the assignment is to make a game for the fans, then reusing lots of bosses they've already seen is probably not as good of an idea, sure. But like, you as an individual, Mr. Fruit having played more of the Souls games, and me having played less of the Souls games, like neither of us is like right or wrong for having that perspective, right? On the other hand, the upgrade system thing. I think it is more helpful to argue that the game is about upgrading a variety of equipment, is about adapting to what enemies come along, and that means the game is about upgrading a wide enough variety of equipment that it is a problem for the game, an objective problem for the game, that, you know, the upgrade system is the way it is. Now, you could still easily avoid it, and that's great. That's great for people who play in a way they enjoy where they easily avoid it. But I would argue it is a helpful criticism of the game because it is not something that is as determined by like, I just prefer to play this game that way or the other way, right? Like, obviously, I, as a player, if you watched anything from me before, you know I'm going to dislike the upgrade system, of course. Like, it's restricting the way I like to play everything. So that's not why this would be a good argument. The problem is that I feel the game is kind of is about doing that, regardless of whether I like it or not. And it's a chicken and egg thing. It's like, well, I like it because it focuses on a thing I like, you know? So, yeah. I think that is also a thing. And the Souls-like games also, it might not come up in this conversation, but there's also obviously a whole can of worms that's like, people view these games very differently in a way related to difficulty that is arguably not really part of the text of the game at all. You know, we've talked on this stream before about spirit ashes, for example. You're summoned jellyfish from the fight before. A lot of people take the angle that these are a thoroughly optional part of the game that, most people wouldn't use, is how a lot of people will word it. And like, so I know why people are saying that. They're saying that because the community around a lot of the Souls games is in the habit of playing games that are relatively difficult. And so they care about the challenge. And if they feel like the game is making itself easier in some way, they're going to be the crowd interested in adjusting the difficulty. A lot of those people probably feel like this game is on the easy side. I don't know. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, just a prediction. I think it's of average, like, reasonable, mostly difficulty. But I think that a lot of those people think it's on the easy side. And so they have worded Spirit Ashes as being optional. But in the text of the video game, there isn't anything to suggest that. No, like, they seem to be a core mechanic. You summon them, and that is how some of the boss fights are balanced out. It's okay if you don't prefer to play that way. I'm not making an argument about it being better to play the way the game is intended. Just that recommending the game and saying, oh, there's this optional but deeply integrated into every aspect of the game part of the game called Spirit Ashes is just not, no, you would assume people would use them. It's okay if people are part of a large subculture that doesn't want to use them. That's not morally worse, but it doesn't really make sense to imagine that you would by default not use them. Like, no, why, Is this that dungeon that has a bunch of hidden doors, or am I misremembering? Okay. Do a barrel roll. Okay. Oh, there it is. Hey, that was easy. Using weapons is optional. You should use fists only. That's the kind of argument people make. I know you're making, that's the joke you're making. That's what people say. And not exactly, of course. I don't want to be... Sorry, it was just very... you were right on cue. It was like I had requested that you did that. That was... your check will be in the mail for reciting the script, yeah. Let's try to juke all the skeletons I didn't kill on the way here. Dun 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 dun. Just do the scat man and everything will be fine. That's how you do it. I just want to equip the katana and then we'll do the boss. That was like there probably is more in this dungeon that I just forgot, but it's fine. We're just gonna do this and then kill the boss. As always, kind of an anti-completionist over here. I think we're saying goodbye to the flail. I am not especially a fan, though I think flails are a very cool weapon from a game design perspective. I just don't like using it that much. We need 1 point of strength. That's a little obscure, but okay. It's fine. That can be had to boof a couple of runes. This isn't really about more or less than some other parts too. I was basically just making the broader point that there will be a lot of ways to approach the game that create a lot of versions of the game that are all sensible interpretations from the perspective of the person who had the interpretation. We are then left to decide basically two things. One, if there is a helpful interpretation that is more objective, what is it? Or maybe there are a few for a broad enough game. And this is a pretty open-ended game, so maybe there are a few. And then two, there are some common angles for perspectives on the game that are not very objective, I would argue, but are just very common among humanity. And so could we word those? And can I convince people to say that that is their perspective on the game instead of this is a core part of built into the game, how the game is? The answer to that is no, I can't convince people to do that. But would it be good if you could? You know, I don't know. Don't look at me like that. Let's see if I have enough runes to get Faith to 17 too. Like if I just explode all the runes I have, because we gathered a bunch, right? Will I get up to, I need like 16 or 1700, right? 17,000. Let's just see. Like, for example, I think, Ragnavar, you might have brought this up before. I'm sorry if it wasn't you, but I think it was. We were talking on a previous stream about this thing where the summons from the outside suggest this angle where maybe the game is significantly about like being a summoner or like a necromancer, but it's revealed as you play more of the game that no, because of the limit on summoning only one and only in some places, they're not really intended to be like you can play as like a necromancer or something. You can a little bit, you know, you can get undead summons and summon them when you can summon undead summons. But the game is providing it more like backup, not, you know, like someone that like a buddy to fight with, or for the beginning of the fight. My interpretation of the summons personally as a design decision is that their main consequence is that they allow the player much more setup than they would have been able to do before. That, like, for example, for this build, it's pretty powerful to be able to spend the early part of the fight with someone else who might have aggro so that you can set up your, like, damage statuses and stuff. But they'll almost certainly be dead by the middle of the fight, and then you know, you're on your own. One of the reasons I think it's not very interesting how most people interpret this game and the summons is that they often describe it as if, like, you could just not play the game and have the summon completely do the game by itself. I don't know, this was not my experience. Maybe it was for some people. I wouldn't like that, you know? Like, I enjoy it because that is not happening with me. I summon the summon dies, I enjoy the fight, you know? And I honestly think there are a lot of mechanics in this game that are pretty unviable. Like, it's not really a sensible inclusion in the game unless there were summons to like give you a little bit of room to set that up. But so in that way, I feel like they're an interesting addition that just sort of lets you get the beginning of the fight going. Would I prefer a version of Elden Ring where you could always use summons, but the enemies had like 25 to 30% more health? I might, yeah. So you get that setup phase, but it makes the fights less easier to have the summon, basically. You get the summon, but the amount of health that the enemy loses from your summon is not very significant, you know, something like that. That sounds good to me. I don't know. Lots of bosses are more than one, so. But for some people, the fantasy they have that makes the game exciting to them is that they beat the boss like literally all by themselves. That's perfectly fine. I think that is why the summons are a thing you can choose not to summon. But are they like not intended to be a core mechanic in the game? I don't think that makes sense. I just need a tiny amount more runes, so I'm selling some torrent food, as it were. Sorry, torrent. We'll get you some nim-nims another time when we get to the In-N-Out at the next I don't know what fast food place is near people. There's that In-N-Out isn't in this part of the country. Faith to 17, hoorah. We in business now. We Dragonclaw now. Hee-haw. Yeah. We're going to Maz. Alright, let me teleport back to that dungeon. Let's kill a man. It's become a conversation about the summons. And why not? Why ever not? Mr. Fruit, I want to start with this. You said, summons are a perfect example because they're an afterthought in a sense. Elden Ring has the same enemy AI issues that we've had at least since Dark Souls 1. they, by which I think you mean the summons, are not bad because of difficulty concerns. Well, that is why they're bad for some people, but okay. But because the enemies cease to function, aggro constantly switches from you to the summon, and the boss proceeds to miss attacks. If the bosses were designed with summons from the beginning, then you would redesign the fundamental code of how enemies function. I think that the AI issues are real, though sometimes they are greatly disfavoring the player, in my opinion. A lot of the time, enemies will do these attacks that, at least I think this is what's happening. The enemy will do like a 3-attack combo, and one attack will target your summon, the other attack will target your summon, but then on the 3rd attack, the enemy will switch aggro and attack you instead. There have been plenty of times where, at least it was my experience, the boss was much harder with a summon, because the summon died quickly. It didn't meaningfully help, but it made it less easy to, like, dance the boss. You know what I mean? If the boss is going to use attacks at me and I just have to dodge them with the right timing, I could have done that, but because I prematurely summoned something, that got me killed instead. And then I just, in those few cases, I just didn't summon something and I won the boss easily. That doesn't always happen, but there have been like times where that was the case. I don't think that's good, by the way. Like, that's also bad. I'm just making the point that I personally feel like it's just that it's messy, not necessarily that makes the summons good. I think that a good amount of the time that makes the summons bad. That's just been my experience. But yes, I think that's a good point. Yes, it's just broken, right? I don't know if I would agree with the you predict that means they were an afterthought. I would suggest that it could I'm not sure if this is better or worse, but it could be that no, they just didn't do a good job with the summon AI, and it would be challenging to do. Holy shit, I didn't even see the enemies. What is rotten breath? That's crazy. What is this? What is that? I forgot the tea again. Dag nabbit, go over there. We can keep talking about summons, but give me my tea. Where did the boss go? Really beautiful view of the fully unfurled, beautiful whole oolong leaves. I mean, it was a really nice tea, so the leaf quality is excellent. Hopefully the flavor is still exists after I wasted a bunch of it. Also, thank you for exploring new tea camera angles. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, I'm still working it out. This has been a new setup, as you know, for a little while, but I haven't really figured out... I've only used it a few times so far on the stream, and I've been figuring out how to, like, have that look good. Pouring things in a way where it works, right? Like, if I hold this teapot and I want to pour in a way that's is ergonomic for me, I'm going to do this. But now I'm blocking the stream of the tea. Very satisfying to watch, right? Maybe if I do this, but then that kind of hurts my wrist. So figuring out a way to do that works well. This teapot is very ergonomic. You can see it's a COOONTENT style teapot. It has a handle on the side that lets you hold it and then put your finger on the lid and very nicely just rotate your wrist while keeping your wrist at like a reasonable angle. But because putting it on camera, it's not that easy to, you know, show you what's going on. But I did adjust the angle so that we have more clearance up here. You can then see from a higher altitude here, right when I'm pouring, if I'm right near myself, you can actually see me pouring. And over here, there's less dead space, so it looks more like you're at a table with me, across from me, is the intent. You can see the lighting is still kind of bad. You can't see the tea, like, at all. In the cup, it's really washed out. But that's just because I haven't set up the lighting for that yet. Like, that's workable. We can figure that out. It's bad. And normally these white cups are good because you can see the color very clearly. If I just make the camera big, and the auto balancing of my camera is going to make the scene really dark while my hand is held up because it puts a bunch of white from my hand, not from the tea, well, both, onto the stream. But you can still see, like, the purpose of these is that they show you the color of the tea in a really nice way. That's pretty good, fortunately. It looks like I destroyed so much flavor that the overly long steep this time was actually appropriate now, because I took a lot of flavor away when I mistakenly oversteeped it now. That's really good. It's not really about summons anymore. We just completely dumpstered that. Euro was not joking about eating dragon hearts giving you power. Holy shit, apparently not. Jeez. Okay, so we're done with that dungeon. We can still talk about summons for a sec. The tea's really good. It's this is a Dunsong Oolong. Dunsong Oolongs are a really interesting category. I had really enjoyed them, having been turned on to them by a tea friend of mine, my tea comrade. She has always been really excited about Dunsong Oolong and introduced it to me. But of course, this is what happens, right? You're introduced to tea and you have an oolong. That's not really a thing. Like, there's a ridiculous variety of kinds of oolong tea. There's not really just you had oolong. I mean, some teas say that, but like, it's a type of oolong. You just don't know. And obviously that's kind of true of Dunsong Oolong as well. Yeah, Dunsong Oolong is a type of tea, but also, wow, look at all these sites of grace. There are varieties, sub varieties, I guess, right? And which one is this? I don't remember. I have a tea provider that I like that recommended a bunch of... Not talking to you, goodbye. That recommended a bunch of oolongs, and they were all Dunsong Oolong with different varieties. So I got all of them, but they were expensive, so I got only a little bit of all of them. And that's why I'm a little sad that I wasted some of the flavor, but that's what you do when you drink tea on the stream, right? I shouldn't have picked the expensive one. That is silly. Oh, okay. I forgot this was... I was like, there's an enemy here. I just don't remember which one. Take the Uchi Katana for a spin. Long man. That felt great. Oh, the length is so good. I've actually never used this weapon to my knowledge. I might have picked it up late in my second playthrough, but I didn't pick it up early in my second playthrough. Like that dungeon we just did. I didn't do that until after beating the final boss when I played through the game the first time. So I have not... at least haven't extensively used this weapon before. It's long as hell. It lives up to its reputation very nicely. And now we can start raiding Stormvale. I thought I would chip away at this while we talked about summons a little bit more. There were a few more comments about that I felt were fit to print from some of you. That's fine. Asymptomatic, you said, summons I personally ascribe a crutch, and my personal successes feel hollow if I had to rely on one. That is a very strong dirty summoner bias, though. Yeah, but you would agree that a game could still present summons in a way where it could be a core mechanic, and you could just decide your personal fantasy is... I don't know. I think it is really interesting that so consistently people have asserted that if anybody other than you is participating in the fight, regardless of how much or how little the game is designed around doing that, it is therefore bad to use the summons, you know? I just don't see why that is such a universal thing to people, you know what I mean? Like, I guess maybe I should just accept that people don't care how much it's a part of the game's design, and that's fine. That is completely fine, it is. But I don't think it's very helpful for discussion, and that's also fine, but I don't know. Personally, I think summons are really weird in Elden Ring because they're a kind of... I think what you said, Mr. Food, about them being kind of an incomplete edition is more like how I feel. That they, like, the game can't really decide whether they're part of the gameplay formula, right? If they're meant to be like a crutch or an easy mode, well, they're not very completely included into the game. There are many fights that are of meaningful difficulty where you can't use them, even though for most fights of meaningful difficulty you can use them, such that if a player wanted to use summons to bypass the game's difficulty, well, they can't, because there are some meaningfully hard fights where you can't use them. So they don't perform that function, but you can use them often enough that they almost perform that function. So they're like a core part of the game's build system, but like only like 75%. You know what I mean? Like, that's just weird. Like, it's sort of the worst of both worlds in a way. So I don't like them as a design choice. I feel like they in some ways don't make that much sense, but in other ways, having them exist in the game fits the game's design goals in that it's about having a lot of different tools and then using them to be able to figure out a way to kill the boss, or a way that you can kill the boss. In that sense, being able to summon some form of ally, and then there being like a lot of different variants of those allies is in line with the game's design goals, which is all I don't know. I don't mind if people like them or don't like them. I'm just interested in thinking about them as a design choice. And it's weird. You see what I mean? I feel like they're a bit inconsistent. I suppose one of the reasons why they might have implemented them the way they did, where you can use them most fights, but you can't use them like all challenging fights, might be because they want players to use them, but then occasionally be challenged without them. Their goal being to tell players that what they really want is to fight on their own, I guess. But if that was what they wanted you to do, it's kind of weird how, like, I don't know, there are some bosses where it's a pretty weird experience without summons, I think. I don't know what that blend is intended to be. It's weird. I think it's very strange. But I wonder if that was what they had in mind. There's a knight in here, but we have rotten breath, so it's fine. Okay. Pretty much what I expected to happen there. Chug, chug, chug. Try to get some distance. It's really not an ideal environment for me in here. Let's try Dragon Claw. That's good against enemies like this. Yeah. Whoa. Whoa, okay. There we go, got him. Is that the one with the counterattacks? Guard counters, yes. Yeah, probably good for this build. I haven't used Uchigatana guard counters, but I would imagine they'd be good. It's long, right? Go figure. Yeah, isn't there, Venomaz, you said I got dual Uchigatanas on my first playthrough. Isn't there a starting class that starts with an Uchigatana? So it is possible. But yeah, there's also that Mr. Fruit mentions the knife in Kaled that gives dual katana moves in the offhand, and I guess you can kill an NPC early on for the washing pole. Yeah, you could kill that one guy. I like that offhand. Maybe we'll get that. It would be an interesting power stance tool. Just power stance it with Reduvia 5-head. You could. Another thing is that Uchigatana and bleed weapons like this are potentially valuable for this build specifically because we do have the option of going for poison armament. I don't think... this game has such weird rules about status scaling. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this playthrough. That doesn't really make sense, but I did say it. And so one of the things we could... Oh, okay, hi. Hey there. Hi. Yeah, that's right. We're doing this. Yeah. Hee-haw. Hee-haw. Is he dead? Is that guy dead? Oh, there's a crossbow guy. Okay. I was like, why am I still taking damage? Get out of here. What I was trying to say is that for this build, having a weapon that has blood loss on it, causes blood loss, but is infusible, that is, you can buff it, is good for this build because we have stuff like poison armament. It might actually not be that good for this build, though, because I don't think poison armament's poison buildup is increased by building arcane even with the Dragon Communion Seal. The same way that Blood Flame Blades bleed build up, I believe is not increased by Arcane, even if you have the Dragon Communion Seal. That might be wrong. I thought I remembered that this game is such a pain sometimes about status build up, and I believe that is a mechanic. And so, not to say that Poison Armament and Blood Flame Blade are then now bad, right? Like the base amount could still just be good, but just to say that maybe it, like, there's no special, like, yes, it's on theme, but it's not actually any better because we're using this build. So, yeah, go figure. I don't have a lot of notes about the tea. Now, I was making the comment earlier that it's expensive. I used a nice tea and I shouldn't have done that. Well, the reason I used this nice tea is because out of my little tasting set, the ones that cost the most were the ones I liked the least, which I think is interesting. It's still pretty good though. The least makes it sound like I don't like it. No, I do. This is still probably a solid 7 out of 10 for me. I just really, really, really like the cheapest one, it turns out. It's still not that cheap, but this is pretty good. Yeah, it's fruity in a way I haven't really had tea be before. Hard to describe. Yeah, like fruit salad. And then you know how sometimes when people make fruit salad, they like put a dressing of sorts on it, which kind of galls me. Sometimes people put more sugar on their fruit salad, but okay, it's a thing people do. Imagine if you had a fruit salad and then for dressing, you dumped tea on it. That actually sounds kind of good. That's sort of what this tastes like. It's a pretty tea-forward flavor, but there's some like dry but very aromatic fruits, like strawberry, I guess. Cantaloupe, maybe? I don't know. I've never really had a tea that has those flavor notes, so I don't really know. It's good. It's interesting. You know, it's interesting to consider, right? Like, maybe I like it the least because I'm not used to this type of oolong, and maybe I will go on to like it a lot. You know, it's a little suspicious that I like the cheaper teas the best. Oh, I have no heals. Uh-oh, this is actually a pretty tense fight. Can I get you to just, like, fall down there? Go around, and then I'm gonna run away. Because there's a site of grace pretty close. Yeah. Oh, hi. Hey there. He's like, that's so cheap. Get back here. Yeah, well, you know, that's how we do. Boy, let's go give him a fight, shall we? Do. Hee-haw. Okay. I gotta get something with Endure on it. We picked that up earlier and I haven't been using it. Whoop. Yep. Great. I'm liking the breaths, actually. I bet we can go over this, don't you think? My mana is just so inadequate for doing a lot of these attacks. And then we bring it on home. Beautiful. Get him out of there. Rolling strong. We're over-leveled for Stormveil is what's happening here. That is what's going on. We should be careening through it because it's not going to be that exciting if I take my time. Mr. V, you said, can you hold the breath spells or is that exclusive to the stronger versions? You can. You do need the mana, but like... with a hold, you get 2 breaths. And if you're locked on or you move the camera, it will track. Gee, with Rotten Breath. Which is a really big deal. I believe the stronger versions they're slower, but they also do more damage and or build up. We'll have to talk about that as a teaser for people that don't know about this looking ahead. There are like named stronger incantation versions of all the breath attacks that are from specific dragons that you have to kill. Then you unlock the ability to get that version of the spell. But they're not strict upgrades, mostly. Surprisingly, usually things like that are in games, which is boring in my opinion. Most of them are like a heavier, if you like, version of the spell. They cost more, they do more damage and or build up, but it's sort of a trade-off in many ways. I haven't thoroughly analyzed the exact pros and cons, but I did dip my feet into that a little because there's some of the few status incantations in the game, which is the entire point of this playthrough. But the default versions are so good, right, in many cases, that it's like, why? You know what I mean? Like, let's say the Scarlet Rot one that I've been using. If there's a stronger version of that, but which costs more mana, and you can't stack Scarlet Rot, I don't think I want that. You know, you see what I mean? Now, it's a little more complicated because Scarlet Rot is kind of a pain as far as damage. There are like different versions of Scarlet Rot that do different amounts of damage. The stronger Scarlet Rot spell is probably actually really good without refreshing my memory by looking it up, because it probably does Scarlet Rot that does more damage. They probably do more upfront damage, but I probably don't care for the Scarlet Rot one. Again, for various ones, it might vary. Another reason they could be good or bad could be, for example, let's say there's a stronger Dragon Ice. There is a stronger Ice Breath spell. Well, what if this one currently builds up just enough Frost that you exactly trigger Frostbite with just that spell? Well, then a stronger version would be surprisingly not as much better, because we already just barely got enough Frost buildup. Imagine that this spell builds up just barely not enough Frostbite. Then a stronger version, even by a little bit, would be surprisingly more efficient because you could cast it only once instead of twice. You see what I mean? Because of the nature of statuses in Elden Ring, which are just so like, what? There are lots of unintuitive initially reasons, like ergonomics related reasons, why these spells might be good or bad in ways that will not be immediately apparent. You know, that would be hard to like look up or conclude from looking them up. Oh, I missed my timing. Still getting used to Unsheath. Oh, I also hate this enemy. I'm just bad at fighting it is what I mean. I guess they're cool. There we are. That's fun. I haven't really meaningfully used Unsheath before. I've used Moonveil, which has a pretty similar mechanic, but I hadn't used that before. Yeah, I mean, and also, okay, that was a bad idea. Another way to think of it is that we're running a status build, and so if they would only barely inflict not enough, like Frost buildup, well, for this build, they probably do inflict enough. You see what I mean? So there's a way in which it's like, yeah, but, you know, the better version is probably not meaningfully better for this build anyway. Ooh, that wasn't a bad fly swatter, was it? The aerial damage, it was good. Sorry, okay, we can finish up the thing about summons. Asymptomatic, you said thing about HP before. You said, my main issue is summons with an HP bar. An immortal, unhittable body is one thing. Asking a player if they want to completely negate every other hit is another. So what you mean is like a damage soak. There's a scale, of course. Palicos in Monster Hunter seem reasonable, fairly reasonable, given some of the things a Monster Hunter is asked to do, like tail cuts and stuff like that. Interesting point. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Palicos, I like that example, is because in Monster Hunter Wilds, we have the thing again that we have in the Dark Souls community, where people are going to unhelpfully just say that they're bad or not part of the game, because to them the thing that is fun is to make the game as hard as possible and specifically as unforgiving as possible. But why is that like the correct or most helpful way to evaluate the game? It's not. It's most helpful to evaluate the game based on a sort of min-maxing of fun, in my opinion. And I think that for a lot of people, being able to get some small amount of attacks off, maybe your Palico distracts the monster for a trivial amount of time, will probably make the game more fun without making it meaningfully easier for most people. Again, for many people arguing against them, that is beside the point. Like, to them, it doesn't matter how much easier they make it, really. All that matters is that it is a thing you could choose not to use that is another body. To them, it's all about, like, I did it by myself. It doesn't matter how much easier they make it, or like how intended or whatever, or how integrated into the mechanics. It's entirely like, well, I did it myself rather than with help. I just don't, this has no value to me. Like, when I complete something solo, that's cool. And when I complete something with aid, that's also cool. And to me, it's only, is this fight more fun for me if I complete it solo or with help? In the case of this status build, for example, I expect that I'm going to be using summons most of the times they're offered because I'm distracted running the stream, so making the fight slightly easier is not something that will damage my fun as much, which is what matters, not how hard it is, but that it is a stimulating level of difficulty. So correcting for that a little seems good, but also because I think that setting up a spread of statuses is interesting. Like, being able to inflict every status and then seeing how that makes the game feel is what I want to know in this playthrough. But actually needing to inflict like 4, damage over time or status over time effects is kind of annoying. And so having it be that a summon would inflict one of them sounds like an interesting way to streamline that process to me, especially in the early game. It's going to be hard to efficiently inflict them all. Later in the game, there are options like, some of you probably know about the Ant Spur Rapier. This is a short, unfortunately, but it's a rapier that can inflict Scarlet Rot innately. Not very many weapons have that. And then it's also, you can put Ashes of War on it. So that means you can use the whetstones that let you pick like blood or poison affinity. You add blood loss or poison status to the Scarlet Rot, and then also use that affinity with an Ash of War that inflicts the other of those things, like poison or blood. So if you use an Ash of War that inflicts poison and the blood affinity for the weapon, then you can have the Ant Spur Rapier be inflicting Scarlet Rot, poison, and blood loss at the same time. Probably you want to favor blood loss because that can be triggered over and over. You can then inflict a lot of statuses, most of the statuses, with only one weapon. And at that point, I'm a lot less interested in getting help inflicting them all. I have powerful enough tools that, to me, that would be more fun. I guess I just feel like most of the discussions about summons don't have anything to do with fun. They're all fixated on, I mean, asymptomatic. Excuse me, I'm not trying to say, you're not saying this is what you find more fun. That's fine. I just feel like mostly online you'll hear people say the only thing that matters in the discussion to them is like whether they make the game the absolute hardest possible version of itself. And that just, like, I don't think that matters if you think about it a lot. Like, it matters if it's fun to you for it to be that way. And furthermore, if you were going to discuss that, like, why don't people discuss like not leveling things up as much? Mr. Fruit, you'd mentioned that before. You earlier said, I don't think that leveling your weapons and stuff makes much sense in the current Souls-likes. And I wonder if you were saying that because you feel like they're too easy. Does it have to do with difficulty, maybe? It has been my experience that a suspiciously lower number of people are discussing that than summons. You see what I mean? There is something that has not at all to do with logic and entirely to do with pride. And that's okay. But I kind of wish people would just have the discussion be about that. Not all of you. I mean, this is the version of the discussion I wanted, actually. But that has irked me with this discussion historically. Does this have the range to hit them? Yeah. Yes, it does. Oh my goodness. Wow. Holy shit. I'm still surprised every time. Yeah. Armor dropped. That's nice. So I don't know. It has been a pet irritation of mine in discussions of Elden Ring. You know, I hate the discussion community for literally every game. That's not new. But I particularly find it irksome for this game, where I feel like it's pretty clear that people are just discussing their preferences and that they like that thing to be a certain way, but they have insisted on saying that, like, somehow it is, I don't know, like, it's important that people know that you're not supposed to use them. And it's like, no, doesn't matter or do anything to assert. I don't know. It's weird to me that people are so fixated on that.
The pleasure's mine. I'm looking for it when I'm not hot-footed.
In fact, actually, ironically, that's funny. Ragnavar, you said the only perspective I've ever seen around Palicos in Monster Hunter Wilds
Here to challenge Godric.
is that they're a really easy way to get status build up for free. Not that I doubt people have said it makes it easier, but I've not seen people hating them on a gameplay level, but more on a just shut up level. Right, they just find them annoying, sure. Mr. Food, I might have misunderstood you. You responded to the comment I just said about you bringing up it being pointless to upgrade things in Souls-likes, and the comment you made responding to that makes me think that I misunderstood you and you meant, like, it shouldn't be a mechanic in the video game, not you think people ought not to do it. Is that what you meant? I'm sorry. Yes, I agree. It doesn't really make sense, right? Some kind of system where, like, when you clear a boss, your weapons upgrade, or, you know, your weapons upgrade to the highest level that you've upgraded so far would make more sense. Yeah, these kinds of upgrade systems are more, the game is allowed to hand out a loot pickup more often, and that is seen as good for allowing you to reward the player a lot of times, like breadcrumb the player along. I have broken that part of my brain enough. Like, I just don't care about that, but I know that statistically humanity does care about that a lot. So, okay, that's fine. But right, it's just kind of uninteresting. To me, the good part of it in Elden Ring is that with the bell bearings, you can create a version of the game where upgrading weapons doesn't really exist. Like, you just spend runes to upgrade them and then they're upgraded. So that's good, but needing to do that is bad. But needing to do that lets them do the breadcrumbing thing, which is good for the people that it's good for. Yeah. So is that a good compromise until humanity moves along with its mindset about this stuff? Yes, is what I think. Yes, I think that's a good compromise. It's a bad thing to need to compromise about, but this is a good way to compromise about it. That is how I feel. Good. Just smart, I guess. I don't know. Efficient. Not even smart, really. No. Yeah. I don't know. We're gonna assassinate this guy with Scarlet Rot. This is what we can do. We can just stick a dragon head in the window and go yell hee-haw. Give him dragon communion diseases, and then we ball. Glorious. Yes, as you know, Mr. Food, I also really like Lies of P's upgrade system, and I think it would be interesting in a game like Elden Ring. I think that is great. How do we short pitch the audience on Lies of P's upgrade system? Because I can't think of how to do that right now. I think it's good. If you want a video version, I did put that in one of my Build System of the Year videos, because I really like Lies of P's build system overall. It's ironic, I dislike the stats the most, and that's the part of this game's build system I like the best. So it's funny that like they and the reason is they copied the Souls-like stat system is something they copied from those games, which, as you might expect, very pleasingly resulted in it being bad. And then there were other things that they didn't copy as closely, and those things are the good parts to me is very satisfying. I'm definitely very biased. That's exactly what I would expect to like about those two things. Give me time to breathe? No? Okay. We really need to get that Ash of War that lets you not get staggered. I have no heals and no mana. So this is going to be a little spicy, but it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Doop. Okay. I'm out of stamina. We're fine. Use the pillars. Use the pillars. Yoink. Sweet Sophie, welcome back. I liked the weapons in the French doll game. I forgot the name. The French doll game. The Scottish play. Macbeth. I avoided the taboo and then I just did it anyway. Uh-oh. Oh, it's gonna be close. He's gonna be close. Okay. It was close. It might die while I'm... like, 1 frame later, the enemy dies. An automaton in the French Revolution. Gotta Google it. That sounds kind of like Lies of P, but an interpretation I didn't have of Lies of P. But no, you're probably talking about something else. The French doll game. Like... that could be Lies of P, maybe. I don't know. Sorry, just gotta... We're not talking about summons anymore. It kind of came up, but yeah, we've done that topic. Asymptomatic, you said, I'm still debating whether I can call this Dragon Breath a semantic summon or not, since it comes from a clearly non-player entity instead of from a gesture. I mean, that's very pedantic to argue, but I see what you mean. And definitely I could imagine how for someone for whom the fantasy was clearing the enemy themselves, maybe they don't like the dragon spells. You know, that makes a kind of sense to me. We go in. Miss. Swing and a miss. Go, go, go. Scarlet Rot. Rot out. Frag out. Did it block all of that, but then still get Scarlet Rot? I can't see. Okay. It's like, nah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Okay, that's going badly. Let's make sure I get my runes, because I kind of need them right now. Let's just run over there and do that, actually. Heart Cloud. Gotta use this more, of course. We took the time to pick it up. Get that poison application, yeah. That was totally worth the time I spent to activate. It lasts a long time, to be fair. Oh no, it's got Scarlet Rot. We're good, we're good. Only 1 breath, and then juke. I'm so bad at dodging this enemy. This attack is long enough that I can probably get off cold. Nope. Alright, let's go Dragon Claw. Abandon the cold. Yeah. Okay. Clean kill. Highland Axe, that buffs roar damage, which there is a dragon incantation that is a roar. It doesn't really have anything to do with this build. You know, it doesn't do status or anything, but it's a good ability. Grail's roar. This is a shortcut. Because I have no heals. Yeah, having only 2 red flasks was probably a little immature, but this is a really mana hungry build because of the breaths, so. Asymptomatic, you had a devil's advocate for the upgrades. You said, I personally like seeing the growing number next to a weapon I have elected as my partner. Seeing that plus 10 or whatever when the opportunity cost of doing so looms in the background reinforces my past decisions. Putting aside when I invest in a weapon I think I will like, then I get the passing another looker in the street when my current partner watches as a me. Right, yes, that thing. Where you upgrade a weapon, and then right after that, you see another, you get the partner passing in the street, the hot person passing in the street meme. You see another weapon you want to use. Right. That is the bad part. Yeah, I mean, I think asymptomatic, my problem then is just the balance you're describing is like fine to me. You see a weapon kind of travels with you through the game. But I don't think that game design fits this game at all. Like, that is not a good fit for this game. You could make this game such that it was a good fit. You would just give the player like a lot, I think, less upgrade stuff. Another way you can do it is to do something like Lies of P had this interesting variant where you upgrade, I think it's only the strikey part of the weapon, like the axe head, and then the axe handle like doesn't get upgraded. and you can swap those out. And so something that happens in Lies of P that's a really interesting solution to the problem is you take your axe head with you or whatever, and then when you get a new weapon and you have the meme of looking at it in the street, like checking it out in the street, you can take that weapon you found apart and use the handle of it on your axe head that you like, and thus you can kind of like take that with you. And it can change the scaling and etc. I don't think that system is at its full form yet. I think you could do better than the way it is in Lies of P. But that was a really interesting solution to you swap in new things. You care about a new thing you get, but you still have like a piece of the weapon that you're like carrying along with you. I just personally think, I guess asymptomatic, my 2 cents is I like that idea. I just have personally found that practically every game doesn't do the balance of that idea well. Or if you like, it's very difficult to do the balance for that idea well. And so I can't think of any games where I didn't despise that. But I guess I agree with you. In theory, it's not that I don't like the idea. It's just bad. I have thought it was bad in every game I've played. But it could be good. Like that doesn't mean it couldn't be fun. I feel like it is an expensive piece of design to attempt. And I do also want to point out that in a game with a lot of different options, I think it's worth considering that it just has bad synergy with such a game. It's not a good fit for, right, that like choose your weapon idea is, I would argue, just isn't much of the text of Elden Ring, though I'm sure some people did play the game that way, and that's fine. I don't think it's a great fit for a game that is all about you getting like dozens upon dozens of new weapon options all the time. Okay. Yep. Hee-haw. And that was the entire fight. Okay. So yes, I think that is a good point. And also Mr. Foot making the sort of counterpoint for games like this, where the problem for something like Elden Ring is that the quote opportunity cost of leveling picking a weapon to level, the quote opportunity cost of doing that in a game like Elden Ring is actually just spending 20 minutes getting the upgrade stones again. You know, if there's you have to find a good way to balance it such that it is like a cost, but like a cost that kind of matters and isn't tedious to the player, I think, for that design to work well. Maybe there's a really easy way to do it and I just haven't thought of it yet. So I don't know. I mean, asymptomatic, the way I would word this, again, you all know with my paradigm of trying to fit, like, we obviously both had the experience we had, so what do we do with this information? The way I would reconcile the difference in our experiences asymptomatic is that for you, the fantasy of, like, the idea that you upgrade weapons and they go along with you for the game is strong enough that you are willing to commit to it in a way that I have not been when I've played games. And for me, I'm demanding that there be a perhaps persnicketily like more final form of that design before I feel I will enjoy it. I feel like I'm missing out on too much build variety I would enjoy because of that design, so it's not worth the cost in my mind. But I could see it being worth the cost. I've just personally, for me, it has not been yet. It's like someone who wants a rom-com is going to enjoy a show that some of the rest of us might argue, like, isn't good enough yet. And, like, who's to say? Like, why is that opinion correct? It's not really. It's just they're saying, like, for a form that a wider group of people will enjoy, I think you need to get that design more right than most games have. So I don't know. I sort of wish I was in your position. I kind of admire that you have been enjoying it for what it's worth so far. I am a complainer and have been complaining about that design so far. But I get what you mean. I could see liking, I kind of want to like that type of design. For me, I feel like I would like it better if it was in a game that very heavily de-emphasized making builds, I guess, is how I feel. Oh, Bloodborne. Hey, that's a good example. Yeah, and especially with like I feel smaller variety of weapons in Bloodborne, not a bad thing. That's just how the game is set up from my experience with it. I haven't played all of Bloodborne. That is a game where I that's a good example, I think, of a game where that may have gone well for a lot of people. Me, maybe, for the time I played it. That's some status build-up, baby. Yeah. Oh. All right, these Stormblade guys. Let's deal with this guy first. Oh. Give him a little footsie. And then give him one of those. Yeah. Right, it's a game more about like you pick which weapon you're using, and then, you know, if the game then gives you enough upgrades that you're kind of switching now and again, but mostly sort of sticking to your guns, and the weapons are designed to be these well-rounded tools, like you could easily imagine such a game fitting well for that design. It's funny, we say Bloodborne has like few or fewer weapon options. It still has a lot, right? But yeah, not as many. I ran out of mana for the second breath that I believe would have killed. Whoa, that's the kind with the fire thing. Yeah, I guess that's the crux of it. Ragnavar, you said, I don't think limiting the number of weapons you can fully upgrade is good design, even if the design intent is for the player to stick with a, quote, partner for a given playthrough, as it creates bad disincentives for upgrading weapons for fear of it not working out later on, making the experience worse in the short term and potentially ruining the game for that kind of player. It might be messier on the surface, but it's player-centric mess much better than the alternative. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the crux of the thing to me. Like, I get the appeal. I'm just pointing out that there are a very large pile of problems over here. The appeal is over there with trying to implement that type of design. Another one that I hadn't thought of until now, thank you for saying that, is the thing that you kind of have to trust the developer too. If you're going to commit to a weapon, you have to believe that the weapons are very balanced. You know, a part of a lot of games build systems is that they imply that the game is better balanced than it ever is, basically. There are lots of games that have solutions to this, but a lot of games have a build system that implies that you should just like trust them on the design. An example of this would be in Elden Ring. Weapons say they have numerical, alphabetical, stat scaling. Dragon Communion Seal here, it says it has D faith scaling and B arcane scaling. This says it has strength E, dex D, and arcane D scaling. This is trying to indicate to you when you build that stat, how much effectiveness or damage does it give you. However, obviously, if you've played video games before, you smell that D faith, a D in faith, that's an oversimplification. And in the back end, there is a number, but the game just won't tell you what it is. Now, obviously, in this example, that's silly and kind of stupid because they could just tell you what it is. They could just tell you what it is. Yeah, and they a little bit kind of do. You know, one of the things I think is like, close to being good with the Sacred Seals is that they do give you the incant scaling number. So there's a ton of numbers on the screen, which is why it's silly they don't just tell you the value, right? But if you look at the center two columns, you'll see there's attack power, a bunch of numbers. It's just physical damage in this case. You wouldn't do damage with this. And then at the bottom below critical, it says incant scaling. If you have a lot of Sacred Seals, you can go to your inventory, click this, and move through the Sacred Seals, and it will tell you which one currently gives you the best scaling for your stats. Now, it doesn't tell you anything about, like, what if you upgrade them a bunch? And the scaling changes as you upgrade them more. Like, they don't improve how much they scale with stats at the same rate. If you upgrade the Dragon Communion Seal, your incant scaling goes up, and building Faith and Arcane is better. But it might get more better, or it might get less better, or it might get about the same amount of better, and the game doesn't tell you that either. So, D+, Elden Ring. You can do better and you're really close, but you still fail. You just don't fail by very much. That's my grade. But to be fair, Elden Ring, grading on a curve, you would get like a B+, because practically every video game in existence fails at this. That's not... Yeah. But the point is, the game is kind of saying like, oh yeah, trust us. Like, when you use Dragon Communion incantations, they'll just be good, right? And they most certainly are, as you've seen for the entirety of this first day playing. They most certainly are very good when you use this seal. They're good anyway, you know, but yeah, no, they're effective, sure. And that's because it's giving you a big damage boost from that ability at the bottom. And also because the game lets you scale their status buildup, because the seal scales with Arcane. The game doesn't tell you that the seal scaling with Arcane allows you to scale their status buildup. But you see what they're doing, right? There's a suggestion in the game design that you're just meant to trust that if you use those abilities and then this seal that's themed with them, like, it will just work. Don't worry about it. Now, what I'm proposing is, okay, but the fun of making your own playstyle is knowing what the effect does, not just believing the developer that their idea for it is good. The fun of it is your idea for it being good. And so and all you have to do to give me that, developer, is to just tell me the number. You don't have to ask me to trust you. You don't have to ask me to trust you. There's no advantage to doing that in this case. If you just show me the number, I could just do it myself. So that is very frustrating to me. Right, that's really good job, Asymptomatic. You also said, oh, I 100% don't think it's good game design or a good game design idea. I like the result of this game design when I happen to choose the first 3 or so times. That's a great way to put it. Yes, right. I was being charitable to you in a different way, and you're saying, well, no, I mean, you just get lucky, and if you pick things that just are good in the game, then it works out. Yes, that's a poignant way to put it, yes. That really tickled me somehow. I just thought that was well put. Yeah. Why did I come here just to slaughter these cute jars? I really don't know. I got kind of alarmed when I realized what I was doing. Let's go sit down. I gotta go anyway. We've been straight 2.5 hours. Murderer. That's a fair accusation, actually, for what I just did. Yes, I deserve that comment. Absolutely. Zandy goes out of his way to murder the children. Confirmed. That's what I did. Yep, sorry. I regret it. That was needlessly mean. They don't drop very many runes. And the turtles. I had to kill the turtles. It's the mage's fault I had to kill the spectral turtles for the tower. So yeah, I don't know. Ragnavar, going back to your comment before about the weapons thing, to finish that topic up, limiting the number of weapons you can fully upgrade isn't good design in most of these games. It can lead to a good experience sometimes, and I personally think you could probably find a way to organize the upgrade system of a game such that that was a good system, but I don't know what that would be. You know, as Mr. Fruit put it earlier, another problem is that a lot of the time it's like you have to commit to a weapon, and you do, but like you have some way to sort of level another weapon or uncommit to a weapon, and the problem is that usually that way is just time. Like you just have to wait some time, and the result is that you don't have to commit to weapons at all. It's not a meaningful commitment to commit to a weapon. It's just really tedious to upgrade other weapons. But then if you remove that and then say, oh, but like, let me do this other thing, you know, the systems that I have seen that I feel like are getting close to that design working are a limited number of an upgrade item, but then you have to be very careful about the limited number of the upgrade item that let you like elevate a weaker option potentially. There's this thing in Faker and Order Grayling. Yep, asymptomatic. Can we get a 27-minute dissertation on the benefits of FGO Grayling right now? No. Next week, yes. Because that is how you talk about this topic. That's an interesting angle. FGO Grayling and how do you make a good weapon commitment system. Guild Wars 2 legendary weapons, I will also talk about that. That's an interesting one. You have to put a lot of time into doing the quests for the different parts of the weapon, and then when you have the weapon, it has the unique quality that you are allowed to reassign its stats as much as you want. And it has like a certain power budget. So it's always the highest stat, tier, if you will. And in Guild Wars 2, they usually don't have unique abilities. So it basically is just the best of all weapons in that class, but you're committing to like great swords or whatever. That doesn't fully do it either, but that is an interesting angle. All of these are going to be, the FGO Grayling thing is also like a mess, but it's good at what it does. They're all like pieces of the puzzle. And if you could triangulate those things, you might be able to come up with a version of that design that is not like good at what it's good at, but at the expense of the entire build system, basically. Because all these things are, it's really cool to go with your one weapon, but it comes at the cost usually of like the flexibility of the build system. You can't really change your mind, which has a whole bunch of problems. As Asymptomatic poignantly put it, it works when you get lucky and pick something that works out the first try. That's perfect. Kick one's wife's stats to the stratosphere despite the naysayers. That's also a solution. Realistically speaking, statistically, people watching this video are people who are used to build systems enough that they will just make the thing they like good anyway. And that has worked out for me before, but that always comes at the cost of like, if you do experiment, you'll usually quickly come to the rude awakening that a lot of things are much better. And I think that it matters that the difficulty you have in a game is not fake. That you can look for it and it is real, that it is better for it not to be self-imposed. People constantly say, if you want to use an item, why don't you just settle for it being that way? And I always find that a really frustrating argument. It's like, okay, but there's no question it would be a better game if I didn't have to play pretend that this is good. And it just like was good. That would be better. We can argue about how bad it is that that's not the case. Like, it's fine if you don't think it's bad. But there isn't any need, surely, to discuss that it would be an improvement if I didn't have to do that, right? I don't know. It's just beside the point that, like, yes, you can still use the item. No one is saying that's a problem, right? And I often do. I often do that. Again, these are the responses people give on the internet that are like, they're saying, I don't want to have a game design conversation. And the response is, well, we are having a game design conversation, though, so please just leave that aside. Yeah, but we have to make a simple game where we can just implement a bunch of these. I think that's the solution from a game design perspective. Like, you could solve this. This is a thing I don't see done in game design that much. There's not a lot of like lab experiment type game design, which I guess it's because it's sort of hard to develop games that way, but I feel like you could figure it out if you put your mind to it. I plan to do this in my lifetime. Same thing with books. Like, you can become a very good writer by learning to write books that are entertaining, that are lab experiments for your like ability to write in a certain way. And there are writers that do this, and in writing, I believe this is quite common. And it's just kind of weird that in a lot of other creative pursuits, I like have never even heard of someone doing these things. So yeah, anyway, just finishing up loose comments. Thanks for the stream, folks. I hope you had fun. Sweet Sophia said, I usually get mad at games for making the seemingly obvious synergy I'm going for not be a thing. Right, definitely there are like some games, and I think a perk of Elden Ring is that for the most part, if you think something like, wouldn't there be one seal in the game that lets you scale the status buildup of incantations? And like there is one seal that does that. Wouldn't there be a sorcery staff that allows you to scale the status buildup of sorceries? There's not very many sorceries that do status buildup, but like, come on, can't we have at least one? And there is one staff that does that. Or there might be more in the DLC, I don't know. You know, I do like that quality in games, but a lot of the time it's like, okay, and the one staff there is bad. And so like that strategy is just arbitrarily not good. I talked about it in the intro video, but one of the quirks of this playthrough is that the Dragon Communion Seal is just busted. Like, it has nothing to do with the status buildup. Like, this seal just has really overpowered scaling. The damage scaling per point of like stats you invest into Arcane and Faith is ridiculous. Like, it's so good at giving you damage. So yes, it does. The unique thing about it is by far the worst thing about it. It is much better if you just use it as like a normal damage stick. At least that had been my feeling so far. I guess we'll find out from this playthrough. But it's kind of funny, right? I had that part in the video where I said, some people feel like this discussion is kind of weird, and it's because this is a very good item, just not for the thing we're doing. That is weird. Why? You know, also, like, why? Surely if the status buildup was really good, and you just make it bad for everything but that, and then surely that would be reasonably balanced. That's kind of a crude way to balance things, but like, it's workable. I don't know. Anyway, I don't like it. If it was my game, I would go for a better solution, but if you needed me to spend 5 seconds balancing this, I would do the exact opposite of what has been done. I don't know. That's strange to me. Elden Ring Convergence fixing dungeon rewards, quote unquote, but then you said, Mr. Food, after you played with it for a bit, you found it introduces a whole new set of problems. I would like to hear about those. Let me write down dungeon rewards. Find a way to do one true weapon, wife, game design. You'll all remember what we mean by that. Okay. And then, yeah, like Elden Ring Convergence, new problems. These streams are good for this because we get to have follow-up discussions about the subject. Folks, more than most streams we've had, I have to go, and I want to say, if there's something that you felt like we didn't get to today, which I'm sure there is, please put it into the archive Parley forum, and I'll answer it for the break this time next week. And hopefully next time I won't overbrew my tea while we're doing a boss fight, because we're going to fight Godric. I am looking forward to it. This was fun. It was fun now that we can just kind of like, we can just do whatever. Be free. Don't need to focus on anything in particular. We can just go out. And my document of like stuff I want to do for this playthrough will be more fleshed out by then as well, now that I have some idea of where we're going. The Dragon Communion spells are way stronger than I expected at this stage of the game. That's crazy. The Scarlet Rot damage over time, I've never used that in the early game, so that's kind of broken. And then the raw damage of the breath spells is insane. Like, I didn't expect that either. That's crazy. So in a way, like, we can go for some jank. This isn't as bad as I thought it would be. You know, only those two things are any good, but like, we have something to lean onto, right? It's fine. I think we should get poison armament soon. We should get a weapon buff incantation soon. That would benefit the build a lot. And my poison is kind of unreliable unless it's a boss fight and we can use the jellyfish. Somebody asked earlier and I missed it. The jellyfish is the weak form of poison, not the strong form of poison, if I remember correctly. I know that most people don't know what we mean by that, but we'll get to it. I believe it's the weak version. And folks, if you want to join in for the tea time stream tomorrow, I'll see you this time then. If you were free like 4 hours ago, this was a long stream, that's when we'll start the tea time stream tomorrow. Would love to keep talking about this. And yeah, whetstones, I'll put that on the list as well. We need those to they let you choose what stat scaling weapons have, even when giving them an Ash of War that doesn't offer that stat scaling. That's a big deal for this. There will be Poison Swamp fan service next time. What the hell? Okay, goodbye. I'm leaving. No, we're not doing that. Well, we're not doing that today. I can't legally stop you.